So hello and welcome to the Old Man Orange podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes, joined once again with good old Buddy.
Yes, indeed.
And we decided that we'd have our little fall background setting here because, you know, we want to get in the spirit first and foremost. I think that was the most important thing. And then we decided, you know what, if you're going into fall, you think about the time you're getting close to winter, you're going to sit down, you're going to play a lot of video games, it's going to be snowing out and everything like that. And we're like, well, let's go back in time and let's do our top list. We went a top 3 list, but of each generation of PlayStation. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yes,
we didn't include Vita and PSP. I did think about that, but I was like, that would get kind of a.
I don't think I would have known any of those games.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, especially Vita. Like that was one of the coolest like handhelds ever. But like it really like its own games is very limited. It's like that Uncharted one's the big one that I always think of.
And there was a couple God of War games on there that I remember playing too.
Oh yeah, well they on the first PSP.
That's what it was. PSP.
The first PSP has a lot of like that's like hidden gem galore system. But
yeah, I remember there was Assassin's Creed Aveline, I think it was called, is on one of those ones too.
Is that the one that would like it was the tie-in to Assassin's Creed 3?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That was actually a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
So outside of those, I wouldn't know another one. So
yeah. So there is kind of stuff like there, but yeah, we were like, you know what? Let's just kind of go through it. It's kind of fun because it's interesting how some systems will give you that thing where it's definitely hard to pick because there's just so many great games, and there's some systems where like you almost are like, I got to look here to kind of figure out what really stands out most to me.
Yeah,
and we're definitely doing that thing where it's like these are kind of our favorite games. These are the ones that stood out the most to us. Not necessarily the best games of all time, but in our mind, this is what really stood out. So, unless you want to start from the top and
so we do like 3, 2, 1. Like if we go that route.
Oh yeah, I would climb up. I would go 3, 2, 1, and you want to start from PlayStation 1?
Let's start with PlayStation 1. That was actually the hardest one for me because I didn't play a lot of PS1. Mm-hmm. I had my 64, and so I can't lie. All these games were also on the Nintendo 64, but from that era, they're what I remember.
Yeah,
so it is what it is. But a number 3 for me, I had to go with WWF Attitude, and I was torn between that or Warzone. Mm-hmm. I would have gone No Mercy, but we weren't doing 64.
Yeah.
And honestly, the reason for that is I just remember the roster being a huge step up. The gameplay was the exact same. The graphics were pretty much the exact same.
Yeah.
But there were so many more characters added because I think Warzone had like 12 characters. I don't remember.
I think it had a little bit more than that for sure. Maybe like 24, but it was definitely like almost doubled for Attitude.
Yeah, and I remember it just having... I remember it took longer. And I think that's probably what it was. Is it took longer. It made me play more. I played it more.
Yeah, no, well, because I remember because Warzone was the very first wrestling game I ever got.
Yeah.
So I remember playing the living daylights out. I also got a multi-tap for my PlayStation at that time period too. So like you could literally have the birthday party and then have like 5 people playing at once. I might have been just 4 on that one, but I know PlayStation went up to 5.
That was the first game that I remember having like a really good creative character. Mm-hmm. And No Mercy did way better once it came out, but I remember with that one and Attitude too, like they had a tie-dye tank top in both games. So I don't think they changed much of the models. I was like, that's perfect. Yeah. Tie-dye tank top, jean shorts.
It's just set and ready to go. Well, that was the thing too. It's like that. There was so much like just, elements to there too. And it's like that one that those 2 games are kind of forgotten after, pretty much, No Mercy, WWF 2000, or WrestleMania 2000, of course, the SmackDown ones and the WCW ones. But there was like that glorious couple-year period where those games were like phenomenal. Mm-hmm.
I just remember Kane was really strong.
Yeah,
I remember it was.
Well, he was on the cover, so that's what.
Yeah, and I remember his chokeslam would just do so much damage, and I played as Kane a lot.
Well, those games. The other weird thing that those games had like the Mortal Kombat like fatalities too. So like when you want to do like a Stone Cold Stunner, you had to like do like up, down, left, right. Circle X.
Yeah.
Like they made everybody have kind of a complicated thing, but
I'm glad they stopped doing that.
No, yeah, that was one of those ones. That was just that time period where they're like, well, it worked for Mortal Kombat. Let's try it for wrestling.
I just remember everybody walking like this.
Yeah.
Like, everybody did it. And then the punches, and everybody had sounds. So I remember at the time thinking it was cool because they had sounds. They put real voices in there. Mm-hmm. So at the time, it was a big step above.
Yeah.
I don't remember the last game I played, wrestling game before Warzone at least, but I remember just being like, Gosh, this is just pushing the boundaries here.
Yeah, the only one I can remember because the very first one I played was WCW World Tour on N64, and then I got WWF Warzone on PlayStation,
Yep.
and then Attitude kind of came right after that.
See, because I remember thinking when those were around, I remember thinking that, oh, the THQ games looked really blocky
Hmm.
compared to those. They looked a little bit more crisp, but the gameplay sucked compared to the THQ ones. They just did.
Yeah, no, yeah, that was as I said, like, but before you play the other ones, really, like, it's great and it's very nostalgic and everything like that. And the roster is big, and they added all kinds of stuff they sort of added and so on, but. And then if you really like those games, well, you just went and pick the ECW versions of afterwards because that's where they
Yeah,
continue.
it's a carbon copy.
Yeah, Acclaim. But that's your number three. Let's see. We'll go into my number three next. And my number three is I don't know if you've ever played this one before, but Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
No, but it's funny that you mentioned that because it's on the PS Plus on the extra one, the essential tier, the expensive one.
Is there one on there?
I think so. Maybe I'm getting mixed up with Lord of Shadows, but
I know they do have a few of them on there.
I'm probably mistaken. But yeah, I've been wanting to get into those Castlevania games, so I never played that one though.
You really should. That one's kind of like it's hard to say if that's maybe like the best one, but it's definitely on PlayStation. I already really like Castlevania so much from Sega Genesis. They had Castlevania Bloodlines and whatnot like that, and then of course the NES games. But that PlayStation one just added all this element to it. The artwork's just amazing. The soundtrack's totally killer. The game's just huge in comparison to like a lot of the previous ones and so on like that. And they put it on all kinds of stuff. I mean, you can get it on PS4, you can get it on PSP. They have a good version of it on there too, and just multiple systems. But
Yeah, I remember hearing about those, but by that point, I had my video game playing was a little bit weird around that time period. But I always heard those games were really good, so I'm gonna have to check that one out.
yeah, and the Castlevania's come in all sorts of things. Like, I know you played Lord of Shadows, and that one's kind of different comparatively to this because this is 2D.
Yeah.
You kind of go around maps. It's got RPG elements to it. That was kind of the big thing that they added in. Kind of like almost like I'm trying to think of a game that you've played that's like that, but the Guacamelee. It's like
Oh yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
So
Okay.
it's similar to that.
I did like Guacamelee.
So if you like Guacamelee, I think you would like Symphony of the Night.
I'm gonna check that out.
But yeah, that's my number three right there.
So going up, I put Resident Evil 2 as my number 2.
Hey, I put Resident Evil 1 as my number 2.
Well, there we go. So I never played 1.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I remember when I just remember hearing so much buzz about it,
Mhm.
and back then I couldn't afford to buy a game, so we got a game for the console for Christmas or my birthday. I can't remember which, and I would use my allowance money. I'd go mow lawns and stuff to go rent games, and then
Yeah.
I'd buy the games after the video store was getting rid of them.
Yeah, that's how I used to buy games too. It's like when I discovered used video games,
Oh
that
yeah,
changed everything. It was like, oh my gosh, I can make like a $5 allowance go so much farther now.
man, I just remember. So I heard so many people talking about Resident Evil 2 and just the buzz that it had. And I remember watching a friend play it and just being blown away. This game is just it's crazy. It's setting the standard.
Hmm.
And then I rented it and I racked up probably $20 in late fees, but I beat that. And
Yeah,
it took me forever, but
yeah.
that was just such a great game.
Oh, well, that was the first Resident Evil I played was Resident Evil 2. I had a buddy Thomas Jaquetta. He let us borrow that, and stay up and just be like, oh my, just scare living daylights out of you and everything like that. Like that was just such a magical experience. But then I went off and got a Resident Evil 1 because I'll just lead into mine this way too. And Resident Evil 1 it's the kind of the game that like sometimes like when people have played the other Resident Evils, it's kind of a hard one to be like because it does look a lot more archaic and everything like that. But I love the old look of that very first one. I think it's got the best story of them all in it. Like there's just a lot more kind of going on. Don't get me wrong, I love 2 and 3 and all that stuff too. But just that very first one, just a classic story. They go into the mansion, something's amuck. You got Stars Bravo team. And it's just those early. There's just that pinnacle period of like 3D games, and there's like three giant ones that kind of stand out. I know Resident Evil is in a little bit kind of different category, but it creates one is Mario 64, Tomb Raider 1, and then Resident Evil 1. And just like those three games sort of set that standard of what 3D games are going to kind of be like and lead them forward from that point on.
So is that I think I have it saved on my PS3. Is it just called Resident Evil, right?
Yeah, that one you have on PS3 might be the remake though, which is still really good though
Okay.
too. But then on the PlayStation 5, you can actually they have director's cut on like the premium section.
Yeah, I think I've seen that in there, and I do want to check that one out because I played 2. I don't know if I ever played 3. I don't think I did.
Hmm.
And then I played 4, and I'd never played anything else since then of the Resident Evil series.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to get back into that one. I have it saved forever for
Yeah,
years at this point.
those ones you should give a go. And then even if you ever want to go back to a director's cut on a PlayStation 1, that PS5 version is kind of a good one because it gives you sort of a safety net. So like if you mess up or anything like that, you can always rewind
That's
and
probably what
stuff
I
like
did.
that. Because it's just kind of nice to have that just in case you go into a room and there's just one zombie that just gets the better of you, or a dog or something like that, or a hunter that gets that one hit kill. At least there's not that, because that was always the thing back in the day is you'd be playing those games on the old PlayStation and so on like that, and you hadn't saved them forever, and you were just you were so cocky and so on like that. I even one time I remember I came to a room and I shot. I thought it'd be funny just to shoot the crows with a rocket launcher. Well, it killed one crow, and then the other 6 crows just came swarmed and got me and killed me, and it was like such a pitiful death.
Oh yeah.
And even on Resident Evil 2, I remember watching a buddy. He didn't save at all, and he got all the way to the laboratory, and a liquor got him right then and there. No saves, no nothing. Oh man, was there some anger?
That game, I remember the controls, and I haven't played the remake, and I really want to, but I remember the controls back then. At first, I hated it. I was like, man, I don't like the way this moves. I don't like anything about this game. And then once I got going, I was like, well, the story's really good though, so I'm just gonna push on a little bit more. And before I knew it, I'd spend 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, which those days are long gone nowadays. But that was a fun game.
Well, and those tank controls too, because that's the thing that a lot of times people don't get them. Is that like they think of those controls once again being kind of archaic? Because Tomb Raider has those as well
Yeah.
too in them. But then you realize that those controls have a very, very specific reason why they're chosen. That they weren't just put in there just because, like, oh, that it's like no, because the game doesn't play right if you don't have those controls. Because the perfect example is like on that remake that they have on PS3 and PS4 and so on like that, they put the so-called modern controls in there. And the downfall is every single time you run to a new screen, because instead of the tank controls where you always hold forward to go, you push in the direction you want the character to go. Well, the camera angle will change, then the joystick angle has now changed, so you have to switch it. It's so it becomes really obnoxious and so on. So then you kind of realize like, no, you have to have tank controls or else, unless you like a different kind of challenge.
See, those are those ones like I've never been a big replayer of games.
Mm-hmm.
Some I've had to for just different reasons, but like so I have a hard time wanting to get into the remake, even though I know it's basically a brand new game. So I probably will at one point check it out. But
Yeah, I the remake's really good too. As I said, that's one of my favorite ones as well. If GameCube's where it initially came out
yeah,
on, but like that Resident Evil 1, like even Resident Evil 1 and 2, like I've played those games so many times. They literally put a DS version out of Resident Evil 1 back in there. I remember like I took it to school and I beat that game once every single period. So that was 4 periods of class in a day, and I beat the game 4 times.
dang. Hey.
Every class I pulled out, like, let's do a speed run.
That's a sign of a good game, though.
That's what I mean. It's like that's what I love about it. There's so much replayability to them. It's the same thing with Resident Evil 2. I'm kind of hoping that they will throw 2 and 3 on like the PS5 just to have those versions on there. Not like they have, of course, the remakes, but I mean the old ones.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I see. I see what you're saying. Yeah, because I've seen the remakes. I think they're both on Plus.
Yeah.
That would be neat to play the old ones again, just for that nostalgia factor, which is what we're doing this for. So
exactly, going back in time. Well, climbing up that list.
Yeah, number one, I had Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
Oh gosh, if there ever is a classic one, and especially the first one, right?
Yep.
That's my favorite one. Like, don't get me wrong, I like 2 a lot, and I like even like the other sequels, but like number 1, I just love the whole straightforward. I mean, just especially being there when that game came out, like that's hard to explain to somebody like how significant that thing was at that time.
It is, and I was never a skateboarder, nothing like that.
That got me kind of. That's how I know about skateboard. If it wasn't for Tony Hawk, I wouldn't know all the lingo and everything like that.
Yeah, but I just remember like playing as some of these characters, and I'd never heard of who he was or Bucky Lassick.
Mm-hmm.
I always picked Bucky because his name was close to mine. But I would pick these characters and just go to town and try to get everything you could, and some of those stuff are still so hard to do. But I played that game so many times in that warehouse level, just trying to 100% everything.
Mm-hmm.
And you could just do the same thing for, at least back then, at least I was like, I should just ride around here and just do tricks for half hour at a time.
You just do free skate and everything
I'm
like
perfectly
that?
fine.
And the cool thing I like about that first one is because like that's the thing is all the sequels they kind of started upping the ante on how much stuff they could shove into each level. Which I love about the first one is that like there's only like 5 things
Mhm.
on each level, and for the most part it's the same thing. Each level has one special thing, but beyond that it's like you collect skate, you get the high score, you get the secret tape, and so on. And I just liked how the simple structure like
Mhm.
that's one thing that like I will say, when you are a kid, like sometimes you feel like you want more. You get that jelly beans,
Yeah.
syndrome where like, if one's good, two will be better, three will be even, more amazing. But I feel like you get to a certain point where there's the perfect amount. And that's what Tony Hawk 1 kind of had. It was just like, it's the perfect amount. You can sit down, play that game, and you can pretty much almost like complete it all like in one
Fast.
night. But it's like so nice because it's like that's all you need. It's like, oh, I got my full experience. Took me 1 or 2 days. I got every tape, yeah.
And I really like too on the remake ones or when they put 1 and 2 out there
Yeah.
that the character models are them now and
Yeah.
not them from the game. I don't know why. I just thought those were
I
cool
love
touch.
that how like they aged with it,
Yeah, I thought that was a really neat touch for sure.
Yeah, no.
And that soundtrack too.
Well, that's the thing is like I feel like Tony Hawk's really one of those things that introduced me to so many bands.
Hmm.
I don't know if I would know otherwise.
Uh, the one that sticks out to me the most is still Goldfinger.
Oh yeah, Goldfinger and Primus,
Hmm.
and then especially when 2 came out, you start getting even more. You get Anthrax, you
Yeah.
get Rage Against the Machine, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, Tony Hawk is one of those ones that I'm glad you put that on there because that is one of those games that I still go back to that all the time.
Well, see, that's why, like I said, I struggled with 1 because that era I just didn't play as much.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember that one. I put so much time into it, and I loved it so much. And I wasn't gonna get the remake until you were like, "Hey, just check it out. It's a blast." And then it was free on Plus. So I was like, "Why not?"
Yeah, yeah. I bought that one when it first came out, and I got every tape or whatever, whatever challenge you want to say on both 1 and 2. Just I went hardcore on that for like a week and got them all, and I was like, man, it's so much fun,
Hmm.
But cool. Well, my number one on that list is I'm going with Final Fantasy VIII, and I don't know if you ever played Final Fantasy VIII before, but
I
it was a life
didn't.
changer.
Yeah, I never played any of them to be honest with you.
Yeah.
That was another game I had. All my other friends played it. And I remember my cousin was really into them, and I remember it was almost one of those ones where because he was so into it, like I almost felt like as if I was trying to explain Kiss to somebody who doesn't know Kiss. Like that's how I felt with him, and I was just like, dude, I'm not interested at this
Yeah.
point because I felt like I knew everything just from hearing him talk. And I've actually wanted to give the Final Fantasy games a shot, but now I wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah, the upside of Final Fantasy is you literally can just pick any of them because they're all their own like story and general universe. So it's not like,
Oh, okay.
oh well, I haven't started since number 1, so I might as not even get into 12 or
Yeah, I'm 35 years behind at this point.
yeah,
So.
yeah. No, at least it's one of those series where it's not like super continual or something. I mean, Resident Evil is more continual than that is, but Final Fantasy also got one of those ones like it's like if you can get into the turn based, it's either turn based is either going to be the greatest thing ever, or you're going to be kind of confused by it. Like that's kind of how it. But you like Tactics Ogre,
I do. I like turn based.
so yeah, so you probably would totally be able to dig it, and they have some really good versions out on PlayStation 5 that you can get now that kind of have a little bit extra bells and whistles to help speed it along. Especially when you kind of get older, it's kind of nice to have that where you don't got 40 hours for a game, so like you can turn on the speed up thing, and next thing you know, you play the entire game in like 12 hours.
I'll have to check those out, man, because they really are ones that I've been wanting to check out for an eternity.
Yeah. Well, in Final Fantasy 8, that's my favorite one. I know 7's always the big one that most people kind of go to. No, I love
That's what I've
7,
heard. Yeah.
but 8 was the one to me. Like when that came out, it just hit at the right time. I think it was just the perfect age for it. You just get really involved in the story, the characters. I love the battle system in that one, and also just the graphics at that time period were just mind-blowingly good. Like one of those ones that's like sometimes always kind of hard to explain to people, but as time goes on, there's like, and then I felt like I like gradually as a kid, I remember like you just see different systems. You're like, dude, it's like so real. Like I used to when Sega CD came out, that to me was like, dude, it's so real, so much like all the way there. And then, you look at Sega CD nowadays, and it's like literally like compressed video images on a
Oh yeah.
CD disc, But man, Final Fantasy VIII, like it just felt like you were just totally in a world right there. You literally. It was beyond the 2D, the care, even though the Final Fantasy 7 ones, I loved like the look that they have, the kind of blocky, cartoony look. But it's like this one's like, oh man, they got dialed in. Where like it looks realistic. You know what I mean? And it flows well, and you got 4 discs of glory and all kinds of stuff, cutscenes
Man, the
galore.
multiple discs.
Yeah, the multiple disc was like, man, that was so much fun back because it made it feel like when you like beat a disc, it was like, You felt satisfied.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm on my way here. You know.
The only game that I remember putting there's games with multiple discs, but the other one that stands out is an X-Files game for that. I think it was on
Yeah, that
PlayStation
had
1.
4 discs or
But
5 discs even maybe.
Yeah, that one was like you were watching a movie, then you just pick things here or there. But that's a different thing. But
yeah,
I need to play. I need to give those a fair shake. So that's probably the one I'll check out is 8, and just based off your recommendation.
yeah, eight's a good one because it's probably just slightly shorter than the others, but it's one of those ones. You know, some people I remember like when I gave Cameron like a long time ago for it was like his birthday or Christmas, and I just gave him. I'm like, I'm just gonna give him Final Fantasy 9. Let's just see what happens. I knew he never really played any of those. And dude, he got like hooked, and it was like later in life, he's like, dude, he always goes like, dude, thank you so much for giving me Final Fantasy 9. He's like, I would have probably never have gotten that on my own. And he's like, in that game, I played it multiple times. It got me to play the other games and so on like that. So yeah, those old Final Fantasy, like new Final Fantasy kind of has gone downhill in recent times. It's not saying that they're okay, but they're like a shell of like what they used to be.
I'd imagine, man, after so long, it's probably tough to keep that legacy going and to like just keep firing on all cylinders after so much. Like I don't know how some of these like Grand Theft Auto does it, but like I can imagine after such a long legacy, it's tough to keep going.
Well, and it's like the downfall. What happens is you hate to sort of say, but this never used to be a thing. But at some point, video games sell out, and they have to like reach a broader audience, or they go for a newer audience, and that's kind of what Final Fantasy sort of did. And I always kind of blame it on Kingdom Hearts. I think Kingdom Hearts kind of jacked up the generation that followed us because that's what they I think thought of was an RPG. And you're like, that's not an RPG. Like that's like a platform hack and slash game that has some RPG elements in it.
And it's funny you mentioned that because I bought when the newest one came out. I was like, I'm going to give these a shot because I had a lot of friends who loved it. So I bought like the Monster Edition that has
I bought that
30
one too.
things. And I started playing the very first one, and I got to like the very beginning, like where it's like, oh, and now I'm on a beach, and I was like, I'm done.
Yeah, I tried to give it because it's like that was one of those games I kind of put off for a long time, and then I tried to give it the college try once on PS2. Then I tried to give it another college try once again. I think on that collection, and I always just had such a. I just couldn't. I mean, I'm not a big Disney fan, so like that's always a tough one for me to kind of like. I always thought that was kind of a lame combo, but I just didn't like the gameplay. That was what lost me. And the gameplay to me for an RPG is like it sounds weird because some people always think story and all. It's like no, the gameplay has to be like firing on all cylinders, or else it's why am I going to waste 40 hours? If the gameplay's not fun, because that's going to be what 35 of those hours are is hack and slashing enemies to death.
Yeah, I might give that one more shot, but probably not.
Yeah, that's how I sometimes feel. Maybe one of these days, I'm at the retirement home days.
Yeah.
But we'll jump up. That was our PS1 list, so we'll go into PS2, and PS2 is kind of an interesting one for me because this was one of those ones that I had to think a little bit more on this one because PS2 is in this time period. I played a lot of GameCube, and of course, I had a PS2, and I did play some games on it there, but this system doesn't stand out to me as much as certain people like PS2 is their jam.
Yeah.
PS1's the system for me, like out of all of them that. That system has climbed up my list farther and farther and farther, and I appreciate it so much more the farther I get. I literally think it's like almost my second favorite system of all time.
And for me, it's kind of weird too because like this was like I was finishing up high school, and I remember we played so much video games. And I remember after high school, I don't know what it was. At one point though, me and my buddy Tyler both were just like, you know what, like we're getting older. We're 18 now. We're big bad adults now. We both went and sold all of our consoles, all of our games, everything. So like, I wish I still kept this. I wish I would have kept my Nintendo 64 more than my PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
But I remember being like, we sold everything. We left GameStop with like $300 each. And
God, you went to GameStop, which means you probably could have, if you sold on eBay, you would have had $2,000.
Yeah. But I remember like selling everything, just being like, I'm good. So like, I played a lot of like the first couple of years of PS2, and then nothing for a long time into like almost the end of the lifespan of the PS3.
Yeah.
But boy, when I got, and I'll talk about that more later, but when I got back into the PS3, it was on.
Yeah, you remembered all those glorious moments that you forgot. Yeah.
So should we? I do have a couple honorable mentions with this one. Should we do those last or?
Yeah, actually, I forgot. I actually had 2 honorable mentions for PlayStation 1. I'll do them real quick.
Yeah.
My honorable mentions for PS1 is Metal Gear Solid because that one is just such a big deal game for me. Like I love Living Daylights out of that. and Tomb Raider 1, because Tomb Raider is just so good. You know what I mean? That original Tomb Raider, like that game just introduces you to like playing that like in '96. I remember I had a buddy who had that. I don't have any of those fancy things, so I had to go to someone else's house to play it. But man, just the 3D elements and so on. Like then that game to me just holds up to this day. Like I feel like it's one of the most dialed in 3D games ever made, and it still never feels old.
So I bought the Metal Gear Solid collection a few years back on PS3, and by Cameron's recommendation. And then I was like, yeah, man, I'm gonna get into these. And like, I brought him over to his house once, and we played the first one, and then but he played and beat through the second one. Essentially just for the trophies. That was all my PlayStation. But I remember like being like, I could tell why people like these games. I don't know if it's for me. I'm gonna try it, and it's been probably 10 years now, and I haven't tried it any further.
Yeah.
Those are good shouts, though. Going on the PS2, though, it was trickier for me. And this one is actually one of the last games that I remember playing around that time period was Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. I played that a lot.
San Andreas was so special.
It really was, and I had to go back and forth a lot between there and Vice City because both those I played the living daylights out of. San Andreas, I just think it had a slight edge to me because I think I put more time into it for sure. And I definitely remember I liked the soundtrack, but it had a cameo on one of the radio stations from a Jesco White, who's just there's a movie called The Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia, and it's just pure trash essentially. But like he's in that, and I was like, well, this is kind of cool. And I just remember that game it tripped me out.
Axl Rose is one of the DJs in there too.
I never knew that.
Yeah, the classic rock station. He's the DJ on there.
I just remember so much of the stuff, and I remember noticing like, oh man, like I've been to LA. Like I remember Tequila La being like, oh, that's the Whiskey a Go Go.
Yeah.
And things like that. I just remember thinking were really cool. And then like that band Love Fist that's in there, like how they were like,
they're more in Vice City. They're in San Andreas, I think, for one moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it always shows they're playing at the Tequila La.
Oh, yeah.
And I just remember I played so much Vice City. I loved the soundtrack. That game had some of the hardest missions of any of the Grand Theft Auto games. But I don't know what it was about that one. I liked that one a lot. And that was my favorite one.
Well, I'll say this, even though I know it's my number one, but the GTA Vice City, that's the number one choice I had for PS2. And since we're just talking Grand Theft Auto, I guess I'll just name that right then and there. But it's one of those ones, like, in a sense, the PS2 era, if that's the biggest thing. It's just like Grand Theft Auto in the PS2 era. It is kind of like, it's kind of hard. It didn't matter what kind of gamer you were, like, that was like, you had to play that.
You had to.
Dude, it's just like, especially, I just remember like Grand Theft Auto 3 when that came out, like, the first week of having that game, I don't think we even did missions. We were just so blown away that you could run around and do all kinds of stuff.
You
like
can do anything.
Yeah, you're just so distracted just by that thing before.
I gotta ask really quick, how many times did you try to jump the bridge?
In Grand Theft Auto 3 and try to make it? Oh, I tried that a few times. You gave it the old college try.
Oh, yeah.
But and I always go with Vice City because Vice City, it's like, don't get me wrong, I like all three of them, And San Andreas is probably go Vice City, San Andreas 3. But man, like Vice City, I think because it had the Scarface element to it, the 80s-ness. I was just like, especially as like in that time period as like a teenager, I was just ultra obsessed with the 80s more than anything else. So that game let me live inside there, It gave all that stuff. It had like the hair metal station and of course, well, just metal in general. And actually all the music's good in that one. Like the pop station's good, the rap station's good, like everything in there. I was gonna say country, but that's in the San Andreas. But even that one, like, it's got a good country station in there.
I think it was Vice City that had Danger Zone. And that was
that's like way later. I think that's 5.
Is it 5? Okay. There was a few songs I remember in Vice City just feeling like I'm just a badass. Like I remember being in like the car that's supposed to be like the Thunderbirds and being like, dude, this is the shit.
Like on some autographs, turn up the radio.
Yeah, that's what it was. That's what it was. Turn up the radio. Yeah. And I love autographs to this day because of that game.
Yeah, I think so. That really, like, it drove a lot of those bands like really in where like it's like, oh man. And just the mix match of all that stuff, the nice colors and everything like that. And yeah, just Grand Theft Auto. Like, it was like when they did that Grand Theft Auto Trilogy remaster or whatever it came out. I remember because it's been a good while since I played them. And I got that and I literally played through 3 Vice City and San Andreas back to back to back. Like, and it was one of those ones. It's funny because like when you go back, if you just play just the missions, those games aren't that ridiculously long. Like, I think I beat Grand Theft Auto 3 in like 6.5 hours, and then I beat Vice City in like 11 hours. San Andreas still took me a while. I think it took me like 24 hours.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you're right. Like they're not that long, especially 3. But it's just that we were distracted.
Yeah, it was the first time that open world was kind of really a thing. I mean, you had a little bit of that in Ocarina of Time and some other games like that,
But
Final
not
Fantasy,
to that level.
But not just the way that was, where it's just there, and then each one kind of add more. Like, cause what I loved about like, especially with Vice City, is I love being able to buy the properties.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
That was one of the cool, because that was the thing that really bummed me out about when Red Dead Redemption came out. I know it seemed like such a weird thing. But I was like, why can't I buy properties? Like, it's like that was like the coolest thing in Vice City and San Andreas, and why would you take that out? I think 4 also, or not. Yeah, 4 took that out.
Yeah, I think 4 did. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that makes sense why it wasn't in Red Dead. But like, it was like, God, that was so cool. Just being able to buy the properties, collect the extra income, and so on like that. Like, it just gave you multiple games in one. I mean, even just the small stuff of like you had the taxi missions, the police missions.
Yeah, that's right.
There was just so much little stuff in there.
Those games were great, and I think what it was for me that tripped me out the most with San Andreas was like some of the small stuff, like when you would eat, your character would get fatter. Like if you worked out, your character would get jacked.
Yeah.
And I just remember being like, that's cool. Like, that was the first time I remember noticing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But dude, yeah, that was tough for me because Vice City's just under there. I just like
they both are like, yeah, it's one of those ones that, like, there's like, that's like a personal preference which one you like more, because they're both so good.
And that's one of my honorable mentions is Vice City, just because I was like, I have to talk about it. So now we talked about it.
So we talked about it. It all kind of worked out. But yeah, Grand Theft Auto, that's on our list there. So I guess we'll go into my number 3. And what I got for my number 3 is I went with Devil May Cry 3.
Man, that's a great game. That's a great series.
And that's my favorite one of all the Devil May Cries is number 3. I don't know, some people kind of, because that game also had that one thing where people went like, every single time you buy an item, the price goes up and everything. I'm like, yeah, but that game's also still pretty well balanced. That like all you gotta do is you start in easy mode and you start working your way up and you get better and better and better, and then next thing you do normal and hard and so on, and then you don't just jump in it hard and then like blow all your money and you can't get any more health left. But I feel like that was one of the pinnacles of like the good old hack and slash action game, which is sadly a genre that doesn't really exist. That kind of went away really after about the PS3 era. Like, they're not there's a couple of them here and there, but like they're kind of gone. Like that was such a big thing. As you had Devil May Cry, you had Ninja Gaiden, you had God of War, you had Shinobi. There was some of the Suda 51 games and so on like that. And then yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned that because like I love the hack and slash stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I don't know if I ever got around to 3 of Devil May Cry, but though I know I played 1 and 2, and I may have played 3. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
But those are just so much fun.
Yeah.
And I'll just mention, because you mentioned God of War, that's my number 2 of this list.
Yeah.
I love the hack and slash games, and that game I actually didn't play until the PS3.
Okay. Yeah.
But like when I first got back into gaming, I was like, oh, I heard this is good. I'll check it out. And
that kind of makes sense because I don't think God of War came out. It was kind of like the tail end of PS2. Because I remember like the big deal of that game is that was one of the first games that had like, if you got the component cables, you can get 1080p out of this game. Like, and like that was like, well, that's a big deal right back then.
I just remember, I will say in hindsight, like, man, Devil May Cry though, like, that's one I want to give a replay to.
Well, they have that nice set that you can buy it, or for some weird reason they have this. You can stream the PS3 version, or you could buy the downloadable version.
Yeah.
And I have it on PS5 because I actually was thinking about going through those again because I played Devil May Cry a few times. I played it like I think on Xbox 360 they had like the trilogy set, and I got that one there. And yeah, because that one just to me is just so much fun. It's just like the right length. I felt like by the third one they had it really dialed in the system. You got Dante in there, you got Virgil in there. It's kind of like a prequel story and everything like that. Like I felt like that was the one that was just firing on all cylinders. And I kind of thought about that because I was like, there's other hack and slash that I like at that time period, but I think that's the one for me that takes the cake. Is Devil May Cry 3. I like Shinobi. There's a lot of those other ones too, but yeah.
Yeah, I need to give that one a shot because I liked the other 2, but I really don't know if I ever played that one.
Yeah.
So I appreciate because that's the one that I want to get back into.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I jump up to God of War, that was one of those ones I'd heard about it forever from different people, so I was like, I'll give it a shot. I bought the one that had both of them on it, like, it was, like, the PlayStation Hits or something like
Yeah,
that,
the HD one,
and I
yeah.
remember just playing it and just being really tripped out because I hadn't played anything like that in a long time, not to that level, at
Mhm.
least, and I just remember being like, "This is freaking incredible," and I was going back and forth between 1 or 2, honestly, and I just kinda had to lean towards 1 just for it was the originator, it was the one that started it all.
Yeah.
2 is really good too. I think 2 from a gameplay point of view is probably better. It
Yeah.
was a little bit more dialed in, but that first one, man, it was just I think it was just because I hadn't played anything like it, I couldn't put it down.
Yeah.
I just remember I played it and I played it. I remember like avoiding like going out. Like I was dating this girl at the time that I worked with. She's like, "Hey, we're gonna go to the Murray's Hotel." I was like, "You guys have fun." I got a like I think that was the one that had a. It wasn't Zeus that you fought. I forget who it was, but I just remember like, "Oh, you guys have fun. I'm on the quest right now." and
Well, that's I always say that's when you know you got a good game is when you use everything else gets put on the back burner. Like,
hmm
and that's what means. I feel like on this list here, these are all the kind of games too that a lot of times, yeah, if somebody could ask you out or whatever, you're like, I got some PlayStation to do right here. You know, I got some
yeah,
God of War going on. Or that was like when San Andreas came out. I remember there was like that game came out. There was like a school dance. It's like forget it, dude. San Andreas just came out this week, and who cares?
it is funny too because even talking about the God of War stuff, I remember one of the days because I played through 1 and 2 just fast, and then I was playing 2. I remember just like looking at the time, like, okay, it takes me 7 minutes to get to work, so I can leave right now. And I just remember just going through and going through, and I remember I got to a point where I could save right before I faced Zeus.
Mhm.
And same thing, I remember getting to work like, hey, we're gonna go out tonight, and I was like, yes, you guys are, but I'm gonna go fight Zeus.
Yeah, exactly. Here we go. That's what we're doing. Oh, that's always and that's one of those sets that I still to this day really need to sit down and play through all those God of Wars. I have every single one on like my PS3, like in this special version. But yeah,
They're fantastic.
yeah, one of those ones I just never really sat down and gave 'em, the good try
hmm
and so on. But yeah, I'm glad you had that on your list.
Yes, indeed.
So what was it,
Okay.
Lee? I think I got one more left because I have mine kind of in an odd way. Is so my number two, since we already did my number one of Vice City, is I'm going with Time Splitters 3 Future Perfect.
Fantastic game.
Gosh, like that game is Time Splitters both 2 and 3, but I think 3 is the one that stands out to me even more. Like that to me was like my favorite first person shooter of like that time period. And that game just gave you so much content. Like that's
hmm
one of those ones that like I would reference that game for years on how much content that it gave you that like many games past that point just stripped from because like you got a big old story. The story was great. It was funny. They had some good, nice, witty British dialogue in there and everything throughout it. Then to top it off, you could play it co-op, which at that time was kind of a radical thing. That wasn't like the most, few games had that. Perfect Dark had it,
hmm
Halo had it, but it wasn't like, co-op wasn't just in everything. And Time Splitters 2 had it too, I guess. But just that whole story, just playing with a buddy, was fantastic. And then the multiplayer, just having those big old multiplayer matches, with having all the friends come on over. Now, granted, I played most of this on GameCube, but main reason I thought like PS2 works kind of fine is because Time Splitters 1 was an exclusive PS2 game, so that's where I kind of feel like it fits in there. And it's a jump. It's the same team that made Perfect Dark and
hmm
GoldenEye, so it's like it's just a continuation of that and the multiplayer. I remember there's so many different like modes you could have, like copious amounts of characters you could choose from, and just cool stuff that once again just you don't see it in like there's a lot of cool features from back in the day in those shooting games that I don't know why they just disappeared and they simplified it and then just
and that was one of those ones that popped up. It's in now the PlayStation
yeah.
Essential one, and I was like, oh, that's another one I got to give a put more time into again. I am terrible with replaying games, and I do struggle with getting back into an old game at this point.
Yeah.
But there's a few, and that's one of the ones that's like I had so much fun with that. And I don't know, like I wonder if they let you do multiplayer. I don't know how that works now.
Yeah, it might have to be local probably. There's probably not like online multiplayer. I played through both 2 and 3 because they put them out on Xbox like maybe a year ago or something like that. So I saw one, I'm like, I'll pay $10 for those, sure.
Yeah.
And so I played through both those again on that version. And they're still just as good. Two is one of those ones. It's got a little bit like old school like GoldenEye controls, and I feel like that throws people off if they just didn't know that. But three kind of The controls, they're like Halo controls, so like it's kind of dialed in for it's closer to more modern stuff. But yeah, I think it still holds up well. I mean, you are playing a little bit older game, but like one thing I've always kind of learned in shooting games is that generally, like whatever time period they're made for, they're made with the parameters in mind. So
Yeah.
nothing ever feels like you're missing something. Like just because you might not be able to run or you might not be able to jump in some ones, it's like you don't need it. Be like it's like it didn't it wasn't made to have that, so it's not
Hmm.
like you're even like questioning it.
And like it's funny that because I haven't played a first person shooter game and had fun with it since this console generation.
Yeah,
And I realized my number one game from that two was Red Faction.
yeah,
And I played that just that was another game that when it first came out I was blown away with because like all the environments were destructible. Not all, but a good amount.
yeah,
And I remember early on you get into this big tank thing that you have to like they're like, oh, the gate's locked. You're gonna have to find a way around it. And the fact you can like blast through with a rocket launcher or get in this tank and just go around it, that tripped me out.
yeah.
And I remember when I thought that game was so long when I first played it. And then I replayed it like a year ago, and I was like, it's not that long at all. It's still a good length for the time. I mean, that was another two discer back then, if I remember right.
Okay.
But that game that had just some weird humor, like funny humor too.
Hmm.
I love the premise. I don't know if you played that one at
I
all.
never. I was one of those. I have them downloaded on my systems. I've always wanted to give them the college try and just never have.
They're great games, and they're both free on that Plus right now, I think.
Yeah, I think they are on that.
But they're great. Two is really good also, but one was just special, man.
Yeah.
A lot of cool new features that at the time weren't in video games. There's a little like I don't know why it made me like smile as much as it did, but there's a spot pretty early on to the game where you have to like sneak around.
Hmm.
So you're wearing a doctor's like I think it's a doctor's like gown. You're wearing some kind of a costume to like try to fit in, but you're being told you have a voice in your ear the whole time
Yeah.
from somebody who they're watching surveillance cameras and guiding you through how to get places. And he's like, "Oh, you want to turn here, and don't get too close to people. They'll recognize you're not one of them." Then he tells you to go somewhere. It's you find out way out of the way, but you see him behind the glass, and he's just like, "Oh, I just wanted to get to say hi to you in person." I just remember being like, "It's pretty funny." Like it cracked me up at first. I was like, "That's pretty clever."
That's cool. I like when they got a little bit of humor because that was like what Time Splitters was good with too. Is
Hmm.
Time Splitters had that humor in there, had the mixed genres and everything like that. And yeah, that's just that time period. There's so many great shooting games from then, and
And I will say, like, to my knowledge, Half Life never came out on PS2.
it did.
Did it
That's
really?
the only system it ever came out on was PS2
See, I thought that was only console.
or
Because
PC.
yeah, only PC. Because honestly, every game is going to drop a tier now, just because Half Life was just the pinnacle at that point for
Yeah,
me.
I have the PS2 version of it, and I actually played through it like only like a year ago because I've like it's a little bit different. It's not, I mean it's the same game, but like the graphics just like they were actually at that time period they were kind of like oh it's a little bit more enhanced on the PS2 version,
Okay.
so you get kind of a different kind of rendering look to it. But yeah, the PS2 one it has one mode in it that's not on anything else. I think they finally or somebody's kind of put it on PC by this point, but
Man, that game was special. Now that I know that every game drops a tier, Half Life takes the cake.
yeah, Half Life is it's so good, and that original version. And then they also have the remake version on PC, which is still pretty cool. They put like the longer version of like
Oh, I saw that
the
on there.
Alien
Yeah.
World, which is kind of cool, but like they make it like they do that kind of classic thing where like they make it almost too long. It's like I don't know if I want to be in this Alien World for like 8 hours
Yeah.
plus, yeah. So, but like that original version, the PS2 one's pretty good. Like it's pretty solid on there.
So I think what we should do, since because you already got your one, like we'll have you start the PS3s. But
Yeah,
do you got any honorable mentions for
I
number
got
two?
one honorable mention for two, and that's just Metal Gear Solid. I feel like Metal Gear Solid ends up being my honorable mention for some reason, but Metal Gear Solid 3. Because three, like I even thought about ones doing, I'm like, ooh, that's probably actually almost even better than Devil May Cry, but I wanted to have a little bit of a mixed like list of stuff. But because Metal Gear Solid 3 is so good, story
Yeah.
wise, had that survival element, and that was the period too. There was two games that came out like because you mentioned the length with like Red Fraction and everything like that. But I remember like when Resident Evil 4 and Metal Gear Solid 3 came out, that was like the first time that like, oh, your first playthrough is going to be like 20 plus hours on one of these
Hmm.
games, not 10 hours, which was like kind of the norm for like your first playthrough on most games was like it's 10, you know. And then that was like the first time I was like, oh no, they actually make some pretty long games, and that seemed pretty cool at the time. And sometimes nowadays some of those games get a little bit out of control, and it's like
Yeah.
they don't need to be 30 plus hours, and there's something nice about having that like that nice sweet time of like, oh, it's only 6 hours. Like it's all killer, no filler.
Yeah, there's a game later on that is definitely high up there. I have 2 honorable mentions for PS2, and it was really difficult because like Prince of Persia: Sands of Time
I
blew
thought
me
about
away.
that one. That was such a big deal
It
game.
blew me away at the time, and then the other one's Guitar Hero. Like that game
Yeah.
also was just so cool, man. It really was fun. And then
Especially like when that first Guitar Hero came out, before it was kind of popular. Like when
yeah,
Guitar Hero was not popular yet, it was kind of like a underground thing to be kind of playing. Like that was kind of really neat.
oh yeah, I put a lot of time into that. And then Rock Band I thought was a bit of a step above.
Yeah.
And I remember I had bought the. It was one of those moments. It was right before I stopped playing games. I was like, what do I spend my money on? Because I bought. They had a Gene Simmons axe bass
I
for
do
Rock
remember
Band.
that. Yeah.
And I remember it was like 260. It was something stupid. I remember being like, it's more than the console.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's the Kiss axe.
But it's the
so
Kiss axe.
I gotta get that. So
I wonder if they had, when Gene Simmons was supposed to come out to our house for like, $10,000.
Yeah.
Can he bring one of those guitars?
Yeah. That's the gift I want, the Vault Gene. What do you got for the PS3?
Okay, so we're gonna start with PS3. I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna start mine off with my number 3 is Resistance 3. I like how I choose 3.
Oh, yeah.
I like how I feel like I've done that a couple times where I've chosen a 3 for that. But Resistance, like all 3 of them are really good. But I thought that third one was where it was like dialed into the max, and that was a perfect example. Of, like Sony had a really good series going, but classic Sony is that they just drop their franchises like when they feel like they don't really need them anymore, and then you'll probably never see Resistance ever again. I hate to sort of say it.
I never got 2, 3, but I really liked 1 because man, when I picked up a PS3 after 4 or 5, however many years it was of not playing video games, I got it. I got it essentially because it had a Blu-ray player.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, well, it's $200 for a Blu-ray player or $250 for a PS3. Like,
yeah, just get PS3.
Yeah, and then I remember going into this GameStop and the girl was like, well, actually, we're doing a sale where you can buy 2 games and get 1 free. I was like, even better.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wound up with a bunch of games again. But that was when I remember like being like tripped out because there was a PlayStation store. And I remember seeing like Resistance 2, and I watched a trailer on YouTube. I remember being like, well, if I'm going to download this, because you only get 60 gigs or whatever it was back then.
Can't just be blowing this. Can't be blowing these demos.
So I wanted to see it, and I played the Resistance demo, loved it. And I bought the full game, loved it. And I don't know why I never really persisted with that series, because that game was really good.
Well, the one nice thing is Resistance 3 is actually the only Resistance for some odd reason that they have on the PS5. But it's the streaming version, of course. But still, that Resistance 3 is so good. Like if you get a chance, and I don't think it's that long. The nice thing too is it's also co-op. I mean, I think they all 3 work. Well, the second one was oddly not co-op. I remember that was like I was so disappointed when it was, because that time period, that was like, Xbox had so many great co-op games. You had Gears of War, you had Halo, Army of Two, and I remember on PS3 that was like Resistance. There was a couple of other just real big like ones where it's just like that was just the glorious days of like split screen couch co-op games and so on. And Resistance was definitely one that was really fun for that.
Yeah.
And it just kind of had that cool, like I like, because it's like it gave you like you had sort of this alien world, but it also gave almost like an old timey, because you had this alternative 1950s era. So you had old school, almost kind of like sort of had this like post World War II kind of propaganda look, almost even maybe slightly Fallout-ish, as well. But dude, that game, I thought that was just one of the coolest series on there, and that to me is like one of those ones that really stands out as being like that was a big deal PS3 era type, thing.
I'm gonna have to check that one out. I'm taking a few notes on some of these because this is like games I never played, and
and as I said, that Resistance 3, for some reason they don't have 1 and 2 on the streaming thing on there, but they do have 3 on there. So
I'm gonna have to check that out.
I mean, granted, you could always pull out the PS3 as well too.
So my number 3 on the PS3, I don't know if you've played it yet, but I've been definitely pushing you to for a long time, is Sleeping Dogs.
I started that one up. I have the definitive edition on Xbox, and the downfall is I started it up after I played through that Grand Theft Auto trilogy of 3, Vice City, San Andreas, and then I played 5 because I hadn't played that. So I like almost like totally like maxed out whatever energy I possibly
Yeah.
had for like an open world kind of like GTA ish kind of game. I kind of lost it there, and it kind of was like, okay, I need to shift to a new genre. But like from what I played, the couple hours I did put in the Sleep Dogs, I was like, oh, this game is 100% dialed in towards what I really like because
Hmm.
it's got the Grand Theft Auto thing, which is cool. But like my favorite part was that it had that Chinese kung fu action movie thing, and
Hmm.
weirdly enough, you don't see a whole lot of Chinese like themed games. That's one of the rarest things. A race person would be like, "What do you mean?" There's all the like, no, those are Japanese games.
Yeah.
Chinese themed games are really, really uncommon.
And so especially because you like that, man, like, dude, you've got to plow through that and get
Hmm.
that DLC.
Yeah, because
The
I think that
DLC,
the definitive version I have has it all in it.
yeah, one of the deals. There's two DLCs if I remember right. One of them is a little bit like sci-fi, and there's like there's ghosts. And I was like, eh. But one of them, you go to this island for a martial arts tournament, and it's just full
Oh,
on
you said
like
it's like Enter the Dragon.
it's so amazing. It's so well done. I just like that because I remember the first time I played through it, being like, okay. I remember I thought the driving felt better
Hmm.
than GTA 4. Like it
Yeah.
just felt a little bit more smooth. And then I remember some of the things you could do, like if you were grappling somebody, like there was some of the interactive stuff. Like you could put somebody's head into a fan. There was a piranha tank at one point you can like hold their head into, and you'd see the fish tank get
You're all
like
bloodied
bloody.
up.
So they added a lot of cool stuff, and man, I loved that game, especially every time you'd walk around being told that you weren't a real man unless you ate a pork bun. When you finally get to play it, you'll be like, oh, okay. You hear it a lot in the game.
Yeah, yeah. No, as I said, in that the few hours I played, I was like, "Oh, this is something really cool." And one of these days, I got to come back to this. And I feel kind of bad that I haven't, but
And there's a wedding level in that game. It is that like I was trying to like compile a list a while back of like my favorite levels in games, and
mhm.
that's I'm not gonna ever finish that list. But if I were to, that mission is probably my favorite. It's in my top three of best missions in a game.
Mhm.
Like it is just intense and
Oh
fun.
man, yeah. As I said, that's one of those ones. I know I would just love the living daylights out of that. Like that is by far up my alley because I just love anything kind of Chinese
Hmm.
kung fu movie. And yeah, Sleeping Dog's one of those ones. I got it. I need to just give it the old go.
Oh yeah.
So let's see here. We're moving up the list on PS3. I guess. Well, here we go. No, not an honorable mention for once, but I got Metal Gear 4 on there because
There you
that to
go.
me, I mean, that game is still landlocked at the moment to PS3. You can't get it on any other system out there. And PS3, I got my PS3 kind of late in life, like towards like maybe like less than a year before PS4 kind of came out. But that's a lot of times a really good time period to grab a system because you'll pick up a system, won't cost you too much. All the games are already out, and now nobody really wants them anymore. So you're picking them all up for like $5 to $10 a piece. So you can just catch up on everything. Like literally in a couple months, you can kind of catch up on all like the big ones pretty fast. And Metal Gear Solid was definitely that one. That was like the main reason because I had a 360 like throughout that whole like era, and then I was like, but the one thing I felt like I was always missing is I didn't have Metal Gear Solid 4. And when I finally got to sit down and play that game, it's just it brings all those other Metal Gear Solid stories just like together. Like you could kind of say that's the perfect ending. I know that they have other stuff that kind of comes after that in a sense, but really that just sums everything up. The gameplay is amazing. It's just like so many cool things in there. The graphics look phenomenal even to this day. And I think it's just one of those ones that like you probably couldn't play 4 without really playing the other ones and really kind of get it. But like when you do see it all come together, it's like it almost brings like a tear to your eye. Like this is something specials, you
And
know.
that's what Cameron had told me because I haven't played through all the rest. But Cameron told me before, he's like, you need to play through these because you will love 4. And like, I watched some videos of it, and dude, it looks amazing. I
Mhm.
love the way that it looks like it handles. And it does give me motivation to want to get through and play the other ones because
Yeah.
it looks great.
The key thing with those games that I've always had noticed is like you just got to kind of get past like can you get to the stealth element of gameplay because that's the one of those ones like stealth gameplay is either you're going to really like it or you're going to find it really frustrating.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's always kind of a little bit the make or break. When I even just remember watching buddies play like the PS1 and just be kind of just getting a little too frustrated with it. They're like, no, not for me,
Yeah.
But yeah, that one there because I remember it was like speaking of PS3 is like there's Last of Us, and there's so many people out there that they talk about Last of Us like it was like the second coming of Christ in a sense.
And to me, this is how I always think about it. I'm like, well, that experience that they have of it, well, that was sort of like what Metal Gear Solid was, 10 years beforehand. Like when you first played Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 and those ones like that, and you had that like real connection, I'm like, that's what they're feeling. It's just the kids are feeling it with Last of Us instead.
And that's another game that I really do want to get at 1.2 to finish, because when Last of Us came out, I remember I got it. I was psyched for it.
Yeah.
I got nowhere near far in the game. And then I just remember being like, well, I'm going to play something different. And I played some of the online mode at the time, which the online mode was pretty fun. I really had a lot of fun with the online mode, but I never finished that story. And I think I maybe put an hour and a half into the gameplay of Last of Us.
It's a little bit long one too. It's not short.
Yeah, and that's just one of those ones where like I almost feel like I deserve to at least try it because of how much it's been built up over the years.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this about Last of Us. To me, I played both of them. I enjoyed both of them. Like I remember when I first got played it, I was like, no Resident Evil. That was like the first thing. Like, don't you dare ever say that. It's got nothing on Resident Evil. But for a nice alternative game, it is fun. I do enjoy them. But I never had really much of I never had that connection. To me, it was just another good game. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, this like changed my life type of experience. Like I feel like I had those games. That was Final Fantasy VIII. That was Metal Gear Solid. There was other games that came, and filled that void, I guess, for my life. But I still really enjoyed them. I still would recommend them. Yeah. I think they're kind of better when you don't get too attached to them, because then people get all weird about the second one. See, because I didn't have that attachment. I was just like, whatever, it's storytelling.
Yeah, it's a game.
Yeah, it's just the guy dies in the first beginning. There, whatever,
Well, and I'm going to use that as a way to segue. So I was really torn between my 1 and 2 for the PS3. Even now, as I'm going through the list, I'm like, man, I can make an argument for either one, but I'm gonna give number 2 to the Telltale Walking Dead game.
Ooh, that's an interesting choice.
This game just blew me away. I played it. I was like, oh, well, I was huge into The Walking Dead at the time. So, Walking Dead game, and I remember just I got it, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. The graphics were very comic booky. I had never played a Telltale game or any of those story based games at that point. And in hindsight, I kind of wish I never would have, because now I love them. But I played that one, and I remember I didn't get it at first, so I was like, "Oh wait, I gotta wait till next month to get the next chapter."
Because that was a brand new concept at that time.
Yeah,
too.
And I remember thinking it was kind of smart. I was like, "Oh, okay, it's $5 each episode, so it's a $25 game." But when you talk about the emotional attachment, oh, somebody dies at the end, did you play that one?
I never did.
So that was
literally the only Telltale game I think I ever played was the Batman one, and I played the Jurassic Park one.
So this Walking Dead one, though, man, you play as this main character Lee, and he's got a cool story, and you learn about him, and he's just a good guy. And I remember your stories, your decisions actually matter, and I replayed that game 4 or 5 times.
Yeah,
but for different reasons. But the first time I played through it, I remember. Do you mind a little spoiler at all? Or?
I mean, I'll tell you this: I probably will never play it. Okay. I'm not saying I will, but I mean, we just know how many games there is in life.
So there's a spot where you get bit, you go trying to find the girl that you're helping along, and you get bit, and I just remember it's at the end of episode 4, and I just remember being like, oh no, 'cause I played through that in 3 hours. I just played it through the day it came out. Played it, beat it, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I remember I just being sad, oh no. And I remember in hindsight being I was mad. I was like, that's such a perfect cliffhanger for them to make me need to get number 5. But just being sad. And then at the very end of that game, when he dies, I mean, and it's just so sad, because you hand the gun to this girl who's 6 and tell her to kill you. And I just remember being holy. No, it'll be okay. But I remember that was the first game that at that point that I remember just being I feel like I had an attachment to that character.
Yeah.
And the reason I played that game more is because I remember being well, I made bad decisions, and I was like, man, I'm kind of a dick, because nobody wanted to come and help me in the sewers to find the girl.
Yeah.
And then I was and there was a trophy for that, so I was like, yeah, I'll replay it to get everybody on my side. And then when the PS4 came out, it was they had number 2. Or I played number 2 on PS3 also, And then they're like, well, your decisions matter. And at the time, I was deleting everything. I would delete my save data because I was like, I'm never going to play these games again. But then I was like, well, your decisions matter. So I was like, so I'll replay it a third time.
Yeah.
Got it over. And then it came out on PS4 with Walking Dead 3. And I was like, hey, your decisions are going to matter on this console.
Yeah.
So I had no choice but to get 1 and 2 again and play through them again. But even, dude, and no matter how many times I play it, like that story just, I was like, that story was so good. And the gameplay was different than anything I'd ever played.
Oh, man, yeah. So those Telltale ones they're always interesting. They remind me a lot of like Sega CD games. That's how a lot of Sega CD games were, and that style of gameplay went away for a very long time, and then it sort of kind of came back. They sort of revived it, and kind of like the interactive movie games.
See, even just now, like I got so like emotional,
all worked up. Well, I guess climb up the list. Speaking of zombies, well, my number one for PS3 is Resident Evil 5.
Oh, okay.
And this is one of those Resident Evils that's kind of like a controversial one. It's like one of those ones that this is either where some people kind of fall off of Resident Evil, or people go, no, that is like one of the funnest games ever made. Like, and that's where I kind of feel it's like one of those ones like, really, it's not really any much more different than Resident Evil 4. I don't know why people always want to make it out like it's like this radical change. It's like it's pretty much the exact same thing. But what I just love about Resident Evil 5 is it's another one of those games that just throws in so much content into one game. The fact that you can play it co-op was something I always wanted in Resident Evil. I literally in the PS1 days, I was always like, man, you got the Claire and you got the Leon disc, but what if you could play together at the same time? Think how cool that would be. Like that was like all that stuff I would always think about. And Resident Evil 5 gave me that. You could literally play that game split screen. You could play it online, whatever you wanted to do, but you could have a buddy. And I think that's one of the best of all the couch co-op games. Man, Resident Evil 5 is so good. You get all the Resident Evil elements. You got the upgradable gun, so it gives you a lot of stuff to play for a while. They packed in some extra DLC, and it's got like the best mercenaries mode. Like the mercenaries mode is like that, like in itself. Like you and like a friend could literally play that for like a good amount of time, unlocking stuff. It's so good. I mean, I go back to that game all the time. I mean, I literally put countless hours just on my Xbox 360 original version, played it on PS3, played it on like the PS4 like remastered one. Like it's like one of those ones that like I even think about buying it again like on other systems. Like I see it, so it's like $10. God, that's almost worth it right there.
Well, you and I talked about this before. Like it's like if it's less than $10, I mean it's $10.
Yeah.
But like hearing this excitement that you have for the Resident Evil games makes me realize that I need to like go through, because I played 2 and I played 4.
Yeah.
And 4 was actually really great too.
Yeah.
Even though I never beat it. And so I want to kind of give it those ones one more crack. And sounds like I got some homework to do.
Yeah, there definitely is one of those ones there. But yeah, Resident Evil 5, like, yeah, that to me, it's like, yeah, if you just want to go straight kind of story and atmosphere, of course, the old Resident Evils are where that's totally at. But like, if you just want one game that's just got a lot of replayability and it's just extremely fun, plays fantastic, it's just the right length, and everything like that. Like Resident Evil 5 just delivers on all fronts.
And so my number 1 has zombies in it too, with the DLC, because that first Red Dead Redemption.
Oh yes.
Like, I still kept going back and forth that Walking Dead. But I was just blown away because I liked Grand Theft Auto, of course, and I was like, oh, it's like Grand Theft Auto with, but a cowboy. And I played so much of that from the moment, because I remember that was another one of those ones because I came in late to the party. By the time I played it, it was on the greatest hit, so it had everything on it. And I remember just being like, I want to check it out, cool. And then I couldn't stop. Like I could not stop playing that game.
Well, I remember when I literally got that game day one when it came out, because that was the thing, is like Western games are so few and far between. And even to this day, they still kind of are. I mean, like back in the day before you had Red Dead Redemption, you had Red Dead Revolver, and I already kind of knew about it from there. But then it's like, you had Sunset Riders, you had Lethal Enforcers 2, the Gunfighters, you had Gunsmoke on NES. Like I'm like really like pulling stuff here to like find where these Western games are. There just wasn't that many out there and so on like that. So just being into Western movies and all that kind of stuff, I was looking so forward to that Red Dead Redemption one. And it really does deliver, because it kind of, just like how Vice City kind of gives you that great Scarface sort of feel, and just like Grand Theft Auto and all that stuff, Red Dead Redemption really did give you a great Western feel. Now, granted, I will say there's one game that never ever gets credit that really, yes, Gun, that sets so much of the building blocks, I think, that makes Red Dead Redemption. Like, Red Dead Redemption gets all the credit, but Gun, like, literally paved the entire road to it, And Gun was, I always, a lot of times, like, I always have a hard time even going, like, yeah, Gun's a little bit older, but, like, man, like, I had such a good, I almost thought about putting it on my PS2 list because of how good it was.
That one is the thing. That was pretty high up there for me, too. That's one I would love to give another shot at. That's probably going to be hard to find, though. Like,
yeah. Well, it's like I have my GameCube copy still of it. There was a 360 version, so I kind of wondered if that one.
Yeah, I played it on the GameCube too.
Yeah, if that one was a little slightly enhanced, and there's also a PC version, and so I kind of always wondered how good that one might look. Really nice and slick.
I just remember with Red Dead Redemption, the story is so good.
Yeah.
Like it's just really good, and that Red Dead or Undead Nightmare.
That's the best like DLC anybody's ever. That's almost one of the best zombie games too.
Yeah,
because like that game, I remember like one of the biggest things about that DLC was that it gave you this real sense of like dread that I'd never felt in any other kind of game because you were in an open world like with like that stuff, and the fact that you could be just kind of out. Oh, I'm just going through tall trees. It's all normal and so on like that. And then all of a sudden you turn and there's a rabid bear coming at you and it rips you up the horse. Oh man, like
fuck the zombie bears.
Yeah, like it would just scare living daylights out of you. Like, yeah, that's one of those ones. I'm surprised that they didn't bring that back for Red Dead Redemption 2.
I am too.
Because that was so good. And the thing about Undead Nightmare is that game is like you call it DLC, let's be honest, it is almost really a full game.
Yeah.
I mean, it literally like gives you, I mean, it's reusing the map, so I guess that's what makes it kind of there. But I think that's like it's almost like 20 hours, I almost want to say. It's like 10 hours shy of the original game.
Yeah, I don't remember how long. I also remember too for that first Red Dead Redemption, that was the first besides like not Half-Life, but Team Fortress. That was the first online game that I remember just playing a lot of online.
Yeah.
I remember getting destroyed by people that were in posses and just being like, this sucks. But I remember joining up with posses too and just being like, oh, we're going to go do these, what would be really hard missions as one person.
Yeah.
As like a gang of bandits. I was like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that game a lot, man.
No, that game is pretty darn. That one's definitely up there as like the high experiences.
And it's weird too because obviously that one came out before the newer one, but because that one's technically a prequel to the original one, like in hindsight, there's so much stuff that's just like, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. That at the time I was just like, oh, he has history with this guy.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I always think if they did, this is my thing. I always think if they did a third one, I always thought this was the second part of it, but really a third one. Yeah, what I think would be really cool is you do a sequel where you play as John Marston's son, but what it is, it's like 1930s.
Yeah.
So and do a thing where you mix, because at that time period you literally could have both cowboy western elements still, but then you mix it with like 1930s like gangsters. So like half the map is all kind of almost like Chicago style, like that kind of, you got your Model A's and your drive-bys and your Tommy guns and everything like that. But then like you could have like the left side of the map be kind of like, oh, you go out to the woods and everything like that. You can still be on horseback. So it'd still have all the Red Dead Redemption elements, but you'd be able to add in some cars and some other things. I think that would be so cool.
I think it would be too, because you would be adding in essentially like, well, hey, like the Wild West is done.
Yeah.
And how they're trying to evolve with more of a civil.
Yeah, like how they're really changing into the times and so on. And I felt like that's something that, like, I don't know, sometimes people get kind of weird about, like, they go like, well, that's sort of breaking our, like, genre and our format. Like, and it's like, is it really a Western? Or it's like, dude, you can have both.
Yeah.
Well, why can't you have both?
Do you have any honorable mentions for the three? Because I do have a couple.
I have one, and the only reason this is a game I really liked a lot, but it's more of an Xbox game, but it did come on PS3 eventually. But it's Mass Effect 1.
Oh, yeah.
Mass Effect 1 it's just weird because that first one's like a Microsoft, like they had the rights for it for like a year. But then like when they made I can't remember if it was either when they made the trilogy or when the second one came out or whatever, they did eventually bring it out onto PS3. And that's the only reason I didn't put it on there because I'm like, well, it's kind of more an Xbox game that just happened to come there later. But that very first Mass Effect, and like I'm like one of those people that like that first Mass Effect, I just love the living daylights out of it.
Yeah.
Like that was one of those games I didn't think I remember seeing a magazine like, whatever, sci-fi normally. It looks like every other game. And I remember I had a buddy, Nate Bumgar. He's like, just take it. You're gonna like it. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. I'll give it the old college try. Let's see what happens here. And then I remember playing it. It was just like, that was one of those games where like I played it 3 times in a row, like just that one game, like before even touching the second. The second one was already out by that point, and I just kept playing the first one over that many times because I liked it so much, and it had that great RPG element and everything like that. And then don't get me wrong, 2 and 3 are still good, but like they definitely lost what made that first one really special. Well, because that was the first time I mentioned it earlier in this podcast, but that was like the first time I remember seeing like, oh, video games can sell out now. Because 2 and 3, they kind of did that, especially 2, is they did that thing where they pulled the RPG element out and they said, well, let's not do that anymore. And then they did the thing where it's like, well, Gears of War is popular, so let's try to make it more like that. And don't get me wrong, I love Gears of War, but I was sold on Mass Effect being Mass Effect, not Gears of War.
Yeah.
So
I only played the first one. Similar, it came out when it had the trilogy or something, and I played it, loved it. Never progressed with any more, but
yeah,
I definitely had some fond memories playing that one.
Yeah, that new trilogy that they put out about like a year and a half ago or 2 or whatever the heck it's been. That was kind of a good way to go back through it because I didn't play it. Like the only thing is back in those days I didn't have the internet, so I didn't have all the DLCs. And so that's why I used to think of those games like they're not that long. They take like 10 hours. I think it was like it took me 10 hours to beat the first one, like 12 for the second one, and maybe 12 for the third one. And then it's like you put the DLCs. The DLCs are actually longer than the actual game. I remember I was playing through it. I'm like, dude, the DLCs on 2. I think it was like that took me like 20 hours just to do that part. Yeah, it was ridiculous, but.
That's good. That's a good though.
But they were good. They were still good. It was not like there was no bad. The DLCs were just as good as the real game and so on. And that set's a nice one to have. And I think it might be on the PS5 on their thing. I know it's on Xbox. It is.
I think I saw it. Yeah. I have a couple honorable mentions. First, I got to go with Mafia 2.
Yeah.
It was really great. It was another one of those ones that I got the demo of on the PS3, and I just remember the shooting mechanics were really great. And again, it was one of those ones where I compared it to GTA 4.
Yeah.
But I just remember being like, this handles really well. This is fun. And then when I picked it up, the driving was cool. Like the cars felt heavier.
Yeah.
But it was like, oh, it's supposed to because you're in like the 50s or 60s.
It's old, yeah.
But that story was so good. And I remember being nervous to play it because I hadn't played one. I remember looking up online, like watching YouTube videos, do I need to play this one first? And everything's like, nope, 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 nope. And then when I finally, years later, only like last year, I played Mafia 1. And literally that one like ends where that one starts in a kind of weird way.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, okay. That's the only tie-in, I guess. But Mafia 2 was special. I remember I really had high hopes for number 3 too, based on it. Not my favorite, but story was good. The gameplay got really repetitive.
Yeah.
And my other honorable mention was Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, which this one actually tripped me out because that's my favorite gaming series. And I was just like, man, like that didn't make the list, but that era just had so many great games.
Well, that's how it is because that was when that Assassin's Creed 2 like quadrant of like the 2-3 games. Man, I played so much of those. That was like when I was really into Assassin's Creed, and each time that like sequel came out, I got into it. And the downfall of Assassin's Creed for me was there got a point where it was like they made 17 games in 5 years. It's like, dude,
yeah,
they're not short. None of them are short games. So it's like, how am I supposed to keep up with this? You know what I mean? Like one game a year was already kind of a lot, but then you added in all the other ones and so on, and then I kind of fell off the bandwagon. And I never really got back on, but man, like in that 2 Brotherhood and what was the third one?
Revelations.
Like those 3 games right there, those were to me were just magical moments.
So when the first one came out for the first Assassin's Creed, I played it and I liked it enough. I played through it and I was like, oh, that's fun. But I just was like, well, it's all right.
Yeah.
And then I actually didn't play any again until Black Flag. And then well, I did play 2. I played 2. Then I played Black Flag and was like, this is fantastic. So then I got back into the other ones and just never looked back.
Yeah, you caught up on everything.
So I kind of created a monster. But what do you got for your 4?
For PS4?
Yeah.
So PS4, starting at the bottom, I'm going with Sniper Elite 4.
Okay.
That one, that's one of those kind of games that like I always kind of knew about those in the background, but I never really played them. And they're like those ones. It sounds sort of like almost even like a generic name. Like it doesn't sound like that sounds like if you were watching a Law and Order episode and be like, well, what was the reason why like little Tommy went on that shooting spree? He was playing Sniper Elite.
Yeah.
It sounds like one of those, but like that game, like, and it was 4 was the one that I kind of started with right there, and Then I went backwards and did 3, 2, 1, and then I played 5 recently on the newer ones. And man, like to me, the first thing I thought was they had Metal Gear Solid 5 that came out on this console generation, and that was one of those games where like you looked at me like it's Metal Gear, it's going to be amazing, and everything like that. And it's one of those weird games where it's like there's a lot of messed up, like broken, weird things in it. The story's off, things like that. It does play fantastic, but then it has all these other weird elements in it where it's just not done right. I felt like Sniper Elite was the one where I was like, oh, this is like how that Metal Gear should have played, and it played just right. And what I liked about it is like it's like I call it mini open world. So it's like you don't have a huge open world map like Grand Theft Auto or something like that. No, you go into a level, and when you're in the level, it's like you're in this kind of like island section of like whatever it is, and you can go about however you want to solve the objectives. So you drop in there, you got your objectives like go blow up these tanks, capture this guy, take out this Nazi, whatever. You know what I mean? That's what you get, but you can kind of go about them however you want. So whether you want to snipe your way through, whether you want to go in guns blazing, whether you want to set traps, whether you want to do the one on the left side first, the right side, I don't know. It's like those games. I have so much fun with them. Like it's a great stealth element game. It's just good third person action. They literally have a co-op element in there that I've never played, but I always go like, I bet you that would just add so much extra layer.
We should check that out sometime because I've wanted to play that because of you for years now.
Yeah,
just never have. It's like this. Yeah. It's like the story of my video game.
Yeah, life. That's one we really should because I think about it all the time. I'm like,
we always play old games.
Yeah, we always do. But like that, man, that's one. We can go really old. I have Sniper Elite 1 on Xbox.
Okay,
that was kind of a tough one. They're like that's like old school. Like, well, is it like one of those ones? I feel like if you would have played it in like 2004, you'd probably be like, oh, this is pretty sweet. It is a definite like, time relic. But especially 3, 4, and 5, like any of those ones, like man, they are so good. They are so much fun, and just the way it plays is just great. Like and each one's kind of like you could literally go back and play those games over again, and you could have multiple different experiences because it's just how it kind of flows.
Yeah, there's always one of those ones where like I have you can probably tell like my style of games based on these lists, right? And that's the cool thing about doing things like this.
Yeah.
But like when I hear like friends like hype up some games so much, I was like, I should probably give it a shot. And that's one of those ones I just never have, and I need to. Then
well, and they gave those ones out like on PS Plus because I think that's how I got.
I think it's in my library because
I almost want to say 4. I think they gave 4, and that's kind of how I tried it. And then I think I bought 3 because it was like $4. It was like one of the few games I've ever gotten like a great deal on, where it's not like, cool, the game's $4.99. Glad I paid $99 for that.
In fact, I know that one's in my PlayStation catalog because when I was going through, when I had the great idea to go through the games that are in my PlayStation catalog and the Plus catalog,
yeah,
so I had actually taken the time to put on a Microsoft Word sheet of all the video games that I have that I haven't played, and then the ones that I've started that need to finish. And I remember that being on there, and I was like, and I remember you telling me like, if you haven't played this one, it's amazing. So that's one that I need to check out soon.
Yeah, you'll have to check it out. It's just so good. Like I just played through these. Like I just got all the DLCs were on sale for number 5, and I was like, yeah, I'll pay that because I like that company enough. I'm like, you know what, you guys need some more money.
Yeah.
Keep making good games, But yeah, Sniper Elite was one of those ones. It just blew my mind at how good this was. Like, and as well as I kind of came a little bit late to the party, but then I caught up really quick.
Yeah. So I got to tell you, man, the PS4 was my hardest console. I really think for me, like, I think this was like around the cool time, I guess, in my life where like I was like, okay, like I'm making really good money. Mm-hmm. Like I can afford to buy all the games I want. I might not get the chance to play them.
You have the good intentions,
but I can. There was a lot of great games.
Yeah.
So weirdly enough, I have 3 honorable mentions for this one.
You can have as many as you
want.
But
I had a 4-way tie because I couldn't. There was just 2 games that I was like, I can't pick one.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna start with my number 3 is a 2-way tie, and it's that 2018, I think it is, God of War, and also Red Dead Redemption 2.
Okay, yeah.
Both are fantastic. Both are great games. I was really surprised that year when God of War beat Red Dead for Game of the Year. Mm-hmm. Both those ones I couldn't put down, especially Red Dead once that game got cooking.
Well, once you get past that, because the downfall of the Red Dead is like one of those games where you almost have to put like 10 hours plus in before it like really starts to get going. And then the sad thing is a lot of people they only put in like that 10 hours and they go, not for me, and they put because that was one of those things about that game. There's a lot of people I know that never finished it and didn't get close.
So one of my favorite memories about that game was, it was more just 'cause it was funny to me. But I remember I was really sick and I was laying at home playing Red Dead Redemption, and I had gotten ahead of where I should be in the storyline because I got on a train and I wound up in the city,
like the
Saint Denis.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, you can play blackjack. And so I remember just playing blackjack. My girlfriend at the time called me and she's like, hey, what are you up to? I was like, oh, just playing blackjack on the game. Um, and I didn't realize how much time had gone by, but like 3.5 hours went by. And she called me and was like, hey, like when I'm off, I just got off work. I'm gonna bring you some stuff. And I was like, yeah, it's cool. Like I'm just playing blackjack on Red Dead Redemption. She's like, still? And I was like, it hasn't been that long.
Oh.
And then I won a lot of money in the game, but I just remember being like, ooh. But I remember at one point it was interactive because people would leave the table, come on.
You get new people coming in.
And it's dumb stuff. Like that stuff that I was just like, why?
Yeah.
But both those games are fantastic. Sorry, COVID. Just couldn't pick one.
Yeah, exactly. More like Gathering.
Yeah, yeah.
You got a little Juggalo dust in there.
Yeah, it hasn't gone away yet, Juggalo-vid.
But yeah, no, PS4, that was another solid kind of era because I guess if we're going to my next one as my number 2 on this one. Now this goes to another RPG, but was Dragon Quest 11. And this was the thing is that this is how I phrase this game. This is the best RPG that I could possibly find out there since literally Final Fantasy IX. And Final Fantasy IX is 2000. So this is like 11 years. Because it felt like for the longest time, there was just no such thing as like good traditional turn-based RPGs. Like it felt like that genre just died, fell off the face of the earth. Handheld, yes, they do. They still existed on DS and PSP. And of course, Pokemon has always been like the saving grace to keep that genre alive. But for the most part, like console ones, it was just like there was limited to almost no ones out there. There was like Lost Odyssey on Xbox 360 and a couple others. Like Final Fantasy X-2 was like the last hoorah of that. But I remember when Dragon Quest 11 came out, that was just one of those ones where I was like, remember I looked at it for like the first month, like, maybe I'll give it a go. Because I'm like, I haven't played a Dragon Quest since they were called Dragon Warrior. That's how long it had been for me, but because that's the American term, Dragon Warrior. Yeah. You're not a question. You're American. You want a warrior. But so I was like, you know what? I was looking at it. I'm like, it looks good. It looks turn based. Yeah, I just felt like I've been burned so many times before, and then I was like, you know what? I'll just do it. So I bought it on PS4, and it was one of those ones where it's just like, it was everything I could possibly want, like in an RPG. Like it just delivered on every single front. It was like perfect the whole way through. One of those games where like it literally like ended and then like had a whole like another section of a game, but you didn't feel bad about that. Like I probably put like 70 something hours into it, but it was not like 70 hours where like, there's some of those RPGs where it's like, okay, dude, your story ended 15 hours ago. Now you're just dragging me along. This one, just everything about it was so good.
And that's another one I never played, but one of my good friends, Sean, he was obsessed with that game.
Yeah.
And he played that so much. And I remember just like at the time, there was other games, which I'll get to in a second, that I remember like he also played. And I was like, hey, far did you get? Because I want to talk about this. He'd be like, oh, I played a little bit, but what I really was playing was this. And I'm like, hey, and he always really pushes like, oh, I don't know if you would like it, but and I remember just being like, it was almost like spiteful that I never played it.
Yeah.
But I heard it was great, man. That's another one of those.
Yeah, that was one of those ones that just it blew my mind at how good that was. It's because it was like a genre that I just didn't think was ever going to come back. Because Final Fantasy kind of gave up on doing traditional. They're pretty much an action game now, with some RPG elements. That's the best way to sort of say it. But Dragon Quest was like, it stayed the course, and it just was like it was classic as all can be. Just had a great story, great character, everything about it. It was such a good game that I literally bought it again when they made a special edition version on the Switch.
Yeah,
I was like, yeah, I'll take another version of it. Like I liked it that much. I'm like, and you can get it on anything. And it's kind of, they literally I think have it on that PlayStation Plus. So it's like, if you're ever the hankering for an old timey,
Well, there might be a 3 or 4 month period where I don't work coming up soon. So
yeah, you might have that time, but.
My number 2 for the PS4 era was not God of War, Assassin's Creed Origins.
Okay, yeah.
And this one though, dude, this one came out for me at a cool time because like not that this was cool, but like my dad had just passed, right? He's like, oh man, maybe like with a little bit of saving money, like do something you've always wanted to do. So like, let's go to Egypt. And then like we knew that Assassin's Creed game was coming out, and so I was like, well, this is like perfect time. So I played it so much, and I played it like the game was amazing. I love Egyptian lore, so I played through it really quick. I beat the game faster than I've any of the Assassin's Creed games other than the older ones.
Yeah.
But I remember just being like, when I saw the times, it tracks you. I was like, I spent 75 hours into this game. Like, what?
Well, did you platinum that one too?
Yes, I platinumed it. But here's the thing: like, in order to platinum it, I think I put another like 25 hours into it.
Yeah.
Because you had to do to the last trophy that took me the time was you had to do literally everything. So like all the side quests, all of everything, you got to talk to every interactable character.
Oh, jeez.
So that platinum took me forever. I remember when I got that platinum, I remember being like at first, like I felt proud of it. I was like, oh, and then I just remember being like, literally nobody's ever gonna see this.
It's almost like that thing. It's like when you platinum a game like that, it's like they should like send you like a certificate you could hang on your wall.
Yeah. Well, now PlayStation Stars gives you some points at least, which is cool. But
yeah, I like that because they actually do give you quite a bit.
But that game, man, like because I've loved the Assassin's Creed series. At that point, they were far and away my favorite games. I actually did not like it at first when I picked it up because they had changed the whole platform.
Yeah.
They went to being full open world, full RPG, and just a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, like the very first person you have to assassinate, like I was just trying to explore and go clear out bases, and I killed the guy, and it was just like, oh, here's a cutscene. And I was like, oh, I didn't. Okay, and I remember being kind of annoyed. But then once the game a little bit further, I was like, oh, this is really cool. You got to see how the assassins kind of started. Those DLCs were fantastic too. And I loved that game.
Yeah, I just remember like we'd go like the movie theaters and you'd give us like the update on how much farther you kind of got on Origins and so on. And it was like a month process. It felt like at least.
Well, I beat the game. I think I beat the game the first month that it came out that I had it.
Yeah.
But then chipping away, like I kind of got bored and was like, I'm gonna knock a few out here or there, a few out here or there. But
yeah,
that game was really good.
Oh man. Well, climbing up our PS4 list here, we're gonna go to what I think is kind of the number one game that stood out to me the most on here, and we're both doing a little playthrough of this game right now ourselves. But that is Rise of the Tomb Raider.
So far, it's so good.
It's one of those ones that, it kind of like, I played Tomb Raider literally since back in '96 or whatever on PS1 over at my buddy Thomas Chiquetta's house. I was like where it all sort of started, and played the the old ones 2 and 3 and all that stuff. And then kind of like I guess you would say sort of fell off maybe Tomb Raider for like a little bit in that middle genre, which that middle section is actually really good. When I came back to it finally, which is Legend, Anniversary, and Underworld, it's like super solid, and like everybody kind of forgets about that section of Tomb Raider, but really good. But I came in, I was like, there was a new Tomb Raider. I was like, you know what? I'll give that new Tomb Raider a go. It looks interesting or whatnot. The very first one of the third series, I guess you would sort of say. And man, I played through that one. I think I played it on PS3 was what I played it through because there's so many systems you can kind of get it on. But and I'm like, oh wow, that was actually really impressive. That still kept classic Tomb Raider-ness, but had sort of this like survival kind of ness to it. I mean, Tomb Raider's always had a survival horror feel, but like this one kind of added in just like this full on like you're stranded on an island survival. And then I got Rise of Tomb Raider right when it came out, and man, that one just felt like it took that original game of the new series, and then just really expanded on it. Put it in like a snowy kind of Arctic area with Soviets, which is just that hits like all my favorite stuff. I love a snow environment for like a level design, any kind of story element that has Soviet type stuff in it. I'm already sort of sold there, and then they just add a little bit more. You had more weapons to choose from, more items you can kind of build. They kind of actually finally started throwing some more animals in there, because that's one of the big things that a lot of Tomb Raiders miss out on, is that the very original Tomb Raider game, you don't shoot a single human at all in that game. There's one boss towards the tail end. That's it. That's the first person that Lara Croft ever kills, or whatever, or at least in that world. And but beyond that, though, it's like that's what made Tomb Raider. It was just like there's wolves, there was bears, there was bats, there was gorillas, there was dinosaurs to really throw a curveball, So it's like one of those ones. Like I think that's such a good element to have in there, and that Rise of Tomb Raider started bringing that back in there. They put in like those kind of tigers in there. They put in those bears that you got to fight and everything like that. And so I wish there was almost a little bit more. They do still kind of focus on like the guys. Like I think at that time, once again, that's that time period where everybody kind of has to be a little bit Gears of War and so on like that, So they definitely throw in a little bit more shootouts for like guys. But I will say at the same time, the shootouts in Tomb Raider are amazing.
Oh yeah, and so I bought the remake one on PS3, but I never played it, and then it was free on PlayStation 4, so I was like, yeah, I'll check it out. and I think I asked you if you played it. You're like, oh, they're fantastic. So like, oh man, I'll try it out. Loved it. It was so good. And then I don't know what it was, but I was just like, well, I don't quite have the urge to play the other ones yet.
Yeah,
I'll get to them. And I just literally started 3 days ago, and I'm loving it so far. I mean, it's really good. From what I can tell, is like you said, they really dialed in on the mechanics. Are just clean and crisp. The graphics are outstanding. They hold up really well.
Yeah, the graphics are amazing. It's that one too. It's like, and for anybody who's like never really played Tomb Raider, but you played Uncharted, it's like you got to give Tomb Raider because I feel like Uncharted is good. Don't get me wrong, but like when you compare it to Tomb Raider, it feels like it can't even hold a candle to it. Like the Tomb Raider just has so much more going on.
The one thing, honestly, Uncharted, that's a game that I could have added to the honorable mentions.
Yeah, number 2 could have made it on that number on the PS3 list because that one is the special of the Uncharted bunch.
One thing I kind of give Uncharted a slight edge for, I will say, for me at least, is like, and A Plague Tale did this too, where it's like, hey, like all the skills you're going to have, you have at the beginning of the game. You just get better at it. You don't upgrade anything. It just kind of goes, which I think is kind of cool. But I also like how on Tomb Raider, it's like because the first one especially, it's like you just go from being a girl that's on an adventure to like having to become a killer, and so you progress with her and get better and better and better. So I kind of like it too for that, because with Uncharted you kind of start off like, yeah, you're a badass.
Yeah, you're already a pirate.
Yeah. So far, man, Rise of the Tomb Raider, I'm loving what I'm playing, and I've had a hard time putting it down. There's been some times when I lately too, I was like, oh, I got to get ready for work right now.
Well, and I want to say that game, if I'm not mistaken, the reason why I think that game didn't really kind of have as much bang as it should have is I think it came out the same time Fallout 4 did, and that instant kind of killed it. And there's a game that's probably on your list, and I'll tell you exactly why that game kind of had that same issue too, if I'm not mistaken. So if you want to carry on your PS3 list.
My number one?
Yeah.
Mad Max.
and
dude, this one...
Wait, I mean on PS4, yeah, right?
Yeah, PS4,
I don't know why I said I looked down the wrong one.
No, this PS4 Mad Max, I definitely did not get it day one. I remember the day it came out, day one, because it came out the same day as an Assassin's Creed game and
Metal Gear Solid 5.
Yeah.
See, and that was because I remember I bought both those games the same day, and I know that was like that was that. I'm like, that's not a good time to come out.
I remember being at GameStop because I went for the midnight release to pick up Assassin's Creed, and I remember like people were like joking about it because like it just didn't get much buzz at all. No. I didn't hear anybody talking about it, but I remember she was like, "Oh, is anybody here to pick up Mad Max?" And nobody did. But I remember like just being like, "Man, I kind of feel bad for that game." Like,
yeah,
there's no way it's coming out at the same time as these. That game, I remember it was on. I don't know if it was free on PlayStation Plus or if it was on one of those.
I think you got because it's a Warner Brothers game, and that's the only thing about. I've bought a lot of Warner Brothers games for full price. And Warner Brothers games always turn out being like $4.99 more.
Yeah, right? I don't think I got it on Plus. I think I got it for like $5 on a sale, and I remember thinking, it's $5. I'll try it out.
Yeah,
and I just loved it. I was blown away. Did you ever play this one?
Yeah, I bought it day one.
Oh my gosh, isn't it?
Because that was the thing is I got it like the same time as Metal Gear Solid. Because I was the person who was really when I saw that there was a new Mad Max game coming out and it was like had the Batman like Arkham Knight engine. I'm like. I'm there. Like you don't need to tell me more.
Just the mechanics of that game. The story I thought was cool. I really liked the story. I love just same thing. You can just ride around on that desert, and they did a good job of like keeping it like so. It's like you're essentially in a big giant desert, but like different areas like were more prone for like thunderstorms and like sandstorms. I just remember thinking like that's a cool mechanic.
Yeah.
And upgrading your car, like upgrading yourself to be more of a fighter as it went on. Like the car combat.
Yeah,
blew me away.
Good.
And I loved that game. Like that was one I really couldn't put it down. I just once I got into it, I wanted to do everything. I don't I think I came close to the platinum trophy. This was back when I still tried to get trophies.
Yeah.
I'll still try, but not like I did.
Yeah, you'll go hardcore.
But there was a few that I just remember. I was like, I don't know what it was, like collectibles or something like that. But I tried to get everything I could in that game.
Yeah,
I loved it.
Yeah, that was one of those ones. It's just a good game, and it just totally, yeah, it needed to come out by itself, not against anything else. There, it's one of those ones. That's definitely something that, like, especially if you like the Batman or you like the Middle Earth Shadows of Mordor games, it plays just like those. So it's like that. That's the best way to sort of say it. It's like that, but with a Mad Max theme.
And hey, that game was just, to me, was just perfect. And I'll mention, since you mentioned Shadow of Mordor, like my honorable mentions for this time period, though, I had the South Park Stick of Truth, which actually I think came out on PS3.
Yeah, the first one was PS3. The butthole, or the
Stick of Truth was better.
What was the second one called?
Fractured Butthole.
The Fractured Butthole, yeah.
And then I had Shadow of Mordor and Until Dawn. Until Dawn, another great game, another story-based game. But yeah, Shadow of Mordor was great. But Mad Max, though, man, like that to me was way better than any of the Assassin's Creed game, better than God of War, better than Red Dead.
Well, you know what it is too? Sometimes when you get a game for like that real nice price and then the game blows you away, it almost adds even more to it. Like you feel like you because it just gives you like that thing like you just discovered gold in your backyard. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I never thought. Yeah,
because a lot of times even if that game was like, if you spent $100 on that game, you'd be like, well, yeah, it's really good. So, but like it might like pull it down a little bit because you spent so much into it. But when you don't invest a lot and it's a great game, man, does that make a difference?
Yeah, some of those what are those bases that you had to beat too?
Oh yeah.
Some of those ones, like, and there's small things that like I didn't catch till way later on in the game. Like there's dudes that are drumming, and if you kill them, the main boss is nowhere near as strong because he's like getting momentum from this guy drumming. Yeah. And I never realized that until like pretty late in the game. I was like, oh, well, that would have saved me a lot of frustration. But
yeah, because I remember that was the one thing. Like some of those, that game, and then also the Shadows of Mordor. Like I would get a little bit frustrated sometimes in some of the combat in there because just comparing it to like Batman, because Batman had that ability that it's a Batman ability that, like, if things start to go kind of haywire on the ground, well, guess what? You can just grappling your way out of there. But both in the Lord of the Rings one and like the Mad Max one, nope, you just get clobbered to death. That's it.
And that Lord of the Rings Shadow of Mordor, I loved that game for that the Nemesis system or whatever it was called, where the bosses that if they beat you, they get stronger.
They get stronger too. That's like a love-hate relationship system, because I remember because then at that point, like, you try to be a guy like, oh, I lost, I go back again, oh, I lost again, and then you can't. Then he's like too powerful.
He's like unstoppable.
Yeah.
But I liked how later on you can recruit them to be like your army too. That game had a lot of really cool, unique mechanics.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever played the second one, though, Shadow of War.
I did. I played a little. I never both. I have both those games and I played them, but I never beat any of them.
Yeah, I beat them both. Shadow of Mordor, when I beat that one, I was very happy with. Shadow of War, when I beat, I was kind of just like, oh, it's over. But that game was a little unforgiving at first because it had been a long time since I played Shadow of Mordor, and there was no tutorial. It was just like, hey, here's this big ass battle, go. And I was like, wait, what? What do I do? So.
Yeah. Sometimes there's those kind of things like that. Gosh, you just seem to be that, like, that just makes us start thinking of more games. Like, now I start thinking of like all the Batman games too. Those almost could have been on the list.
Yeah,
it's amazing how that kind of is. But boy, that's our PS4. So we're at the tail end now. We're at our PS5, and PS5 was a weird one. This was the hardest list for me to come up with. And I know it might seem like, oh, you're in PS5 right now, maybe, but it's like, it's weird. There's not as many games that have stuck out as much in this last, and I don't mean to say that like, oh, we're just old and like we just like the olden times, but no, I don't think so as much, because I feel like it's not that I haven't been playing games. I just think that a lot of the games I've been playing on PS5 era are either remasters, remakes, collections, things of that sort of nature. Nintendo games, there's less of the stuff there is. So my list was kind of like ones that felt like it took a little bit of a moment to kind of put together. And the games I do have, I do like, but like, it wasn't like like the other ones where you're like, man, okay, this one now, not that one. So who wants to start first with the PS5?
I'll let you go ahead.
Okay, well, my very first one at number 3 is Ghost of Tsushima, and this one,
number 1.
This is the one I had to look up because I was like, wait a second, I know this came out on PS4, and I looked, I was like, oh, it was like a 1 month like apart thing. I'm like, okay, that's pretty much a PS5, because that's like the weird thing when you get to like this time period of like, especially PS4 and PS5. Is that so many of the games are released on both systems, and even nowadays the games still come out on both systems. It's so strange. And then there's even some weird ones too. If you go back in the day, where like they still came out on PS3 when it was like a PS4 game. It's like what? Like that Rise of the Tomb Raider. I didn't realize that game actually came out on 360 and PS3. It's like so strange.
I think this is one of those ones where that's my number one for the PS5 era, and so like we'll just do what we did with one of the other ones.
You just combined them.
But it was so good.
It was. Because that was the thing. Is like I kind of had something where I said where I was like, I'm kind of done with open world games. Like I wasn't really going out of my way to if the game is like, oh, it's an open world game. I'm like, well, guess what? I'm not playing it then.
Yeah.
Because they just sort of got to the point where it just felt like same old, same old. Here's that. I'm not saying there's probably some great ones out there I just was missing out on, but like, I just kind of was like, you know what? If I'm gonna play open world, I'm gonna play Grand Theft Auto or Assassin's Creed. Like that would be the two things I would go towards. And then this one kind of came out. I was like, oh, samurai themed. Mm-hmm. Well, that can lead me in. You know what I mean? And then especially when it had a very Akira Kurosawa theme, I was like, oh, yeah, let's go with this.
I was just blown away with it from the start because it was unlike anything I'd ever played. I platinumed this one too. Yeah. I just couldn't. I didn't want to stop. And that game actually rewards you for getting the platinum. They get a pretty cool outfit. But cool. I just couldn't stop playing it. It was so fun. I loved the standoffs, and if you timed it just right, how you can like kill them in one hit.
Yep.
The story was fantastic. I could not stop that one. And that one, I played that one when I was living in Austin, and I remember just being like even then that was difficult because I remember like being in a new area, new people wanted to be like, hey, come out and do this. Meet up. I was like, oh well,
sure seems.
I would love to go here, but I gotta.
But if I go there, the Mongols win.
Yeah, and what that game did really well that I liked a lot was there was a lot of side missions, but they all actually meant something.
Yeah,
there wasn't any wasted ones, and so they were all for somebody else's branching story, which was cool. And
yeah, it wasn't just really like, hey, could you go get cat litter for me? I know you're trying to save this island, but this is really important. Like that, that's always something that drove me up the wall.
There was one that was really early on that I remember I liked when like you're basically like just learning how to fight and stuff, and you go and do something, and then you're like oh they're gonna get what's coming to them, and you see the next mission literally right in front of you. And I was like, "Oh, that's smart." Because I remember it was like, I got to play that one now because he's right. They do need revenge, and I'm right here.
Yeah,
and then when
they did them like in little blocks, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, and then when I finally did like finish that one, man, like that one, what took me time was like to go to find all the small stuff, like chasing the squirrels and chasing the haikus and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The bamboo sticks was really hard to master with the button combos.
Oh, but yeah, that one, yeah, you sit there for a moment.
That DLC though, they had a DLC that where you go to a different island.
Yeah,
is so hard. Even on the easiest difficulties, it was really difficult.
Yeah, they really wanted to challenge you out there. Yeah, no, that game was just overall like it just captured so much of that. And the kind of cool thing is that because of that game, we've kind of finally gotten. So it's weird. You think of video games and being so Japanese and something like that, but it's actually there's very few samurai games out there. Like oddly enough, it's like Way of the Samurai, like on PS1 and 2. Samurai Showdown. There's things like that, but this game kind of spawned that like there was a Team Ninja game that came out earlier this year. God, like Rise of the Ronin. There's that one, and then of course the new Assassin's Creed game. It has, a ninja sort of samurai theme, which looks. I almost feel like that might be the Assassin's Creed game that finally gets me right back in there. I'm like, you got that ninja samurai theme, God, like looking kind of like Tenchu. It's like, okay, I think I might have to jump back in. That seems like a good one to start back up. But that Ghost of Tsushima is everything about it. Played great story. It's literally just Red Dead Redemption, but I don't mean to say like a copy, but I mean like it has like same quality as Red Dead Redemption, just in a samurai form. And that was also my first PS5 game I think I got.
So that was the first game that made me. That one's the one that made me want to, when PlayStation upgraded the Plus models, to be like, oh, here's different tiers now.
Yeah.
Where I remember, because I bought that game early on into having the PS5.
Yeah.
Full price. And then when it came out on PlayStation Plus, I returned my copy to GameStop and was like, well, I'm just going to download it on here.
Yeah.
And man, that game was just, I can't say enough good about it.
Yeah, no, that was a solid one. So what's your number 3?
Well, number 3, it was kind of a toss up. I'm changing what I had written down. I'd written down Spider-Man 2. And the more I thought about it, I was like, because I was really trying to think, I was like, I feel like I'm just putting something down just to put it down because I couldn't think of one.
Yeah.
And Spider-Man 2 is fantastic. It's really great. But I got to go with Assassin's Creed Mirage.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a smaller game. It had a lot of stuff that made it seem like it was one of the old games again.
Yeah, because
like,
that's the one that went back to being kind of a classic format.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely more stealth based. They didn't go crazy with like a lot of the outfits like they did. It was very just like, hey, here you go.
Yeah.
But what they did really good was there's a side. Well, he looks like he's going to start to be a side character in Valhalla. Winds up being the main antagonist, but you're him in this game, and he was a great character in Valhalla. So when they made this mini game, I guess it was originally supposed to be a DLC.
Yeah.
But they wanted to expand it, and you see his progression and his story, and like they keep like the way they did that story was really cool because in that game that character is actually Loki.
Okay.
Valhalla started to piss me off as they got too into that. But in this game, it's like there's just a lot of little neat nuances that like they don't outright like be like, oh, you're Loki, but like you keep being told like, hey, like you shouldn't go here, like you'll unravel secrets that you don't need to know, and then at the end of it you unraveled some secrets, and then like they had like the ending cutscene where he's talking to himself on this cliff and he just says, I remember everything now. And it's just kind of like, oh. But dude, that game, it plays so good. What I liked about it though, because like with Origins and Odyssey and Valhalla, is like you can go into a fight and you're a badass and you're gonna fuck shit up.
Yeah.
With this one, if you go into a fight with more than one person, you're probably gonna die because you're not meant to be sword fighting.
Yeah.
You can do it, and if you have to, but you got to be good. Like I struggled with the sword fighting because it wanted you to be stealthy, and it just did such a good job.
That's cool. Yeah. I remember when that one kind of came out. As I said, there's a lot of points in Assassin's Creed where I go, I should jump in on this one, you know, and then like a lot of times it'll come and go and so on there. As I said, I think that new, you know, Samurai one might be the one where I'm like, you know what, I think I'm gonna have to.
So to be honest with you, I was thinking about this for you. I would say like Mirage is a good jumping back end point because it's a shorter game. I think I did everything in like 12 hours.
Oh, see, that's not bad. That's like the shortest Assassin's. That's like
yeah.
Because mostly I used to always say they were like on average like 30 hours. We're all like the 2, 3, you know, Black Flag.
So it'll give you a chance to kind of dive in, see it. Because this new one, from what I gathered, like one character is going to be very stealthy, and the other one's like a badass samurai. So it'll give you the choice if you want to just go in and fuck shit up or be stealthy. Yeah. I don't know. I'm excited to see it, but
yeah, no, it looks cool.
Yeah, what do you got for your number? 2?
So my number 2, I'm going with. I put down Diablo 4 actually.
Oh, that was actually my number 3 then, huh? I got confused because the way we did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Diablo 4, hell yeah.
So I put down that one because you know, it was one of those that this is one of those what I was kind of thinking. I was like, yeah, that was one of those games where I did put a good copious amount of time in it. I really enjoyed it. They got a new DLC coming out like in a month. You know, Diablo's just always kind of good, and this one sort of had like, you know, Diablo 3. Like I like Diablo 3. It does have like I always call it has like the Saturday morning cartoon feel of like Diablo, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's just different. This one kind of goes back to like, you know, a Diablo 2 sort of look, a little bit darker, a little bit more grimmer, and so on like that. You know, and you know, nothing too radically different. It's still classic Diablo, and that gameplay style. It's like I feel like you don't want to mess with it too much because if you start, because you see other companies and they'll start trying to add things to it, and that's times where you lose it at because you get too much stuff in there. It's like okay, now it's too much, you know. And yeah, it's just everything about Diablo 4 was still a pretty solid game. You know, kept my interest well, you know, and had good classes and everything in there, and just even the level up system was kind of nice. It kind of had it so you couldn't really jack yourself up too much. Like, you know, Diablo 2, you know, you could definitely like buy some wrong skills and like, well, guess what? You're kind of stuck with that. You get one reset and that's it.
I haven't played that yet. I have it. Bought it not day one, but really close to.
Yeah.
But I still haven't finished 3.
Well, we should sit down and play through that one because that one's a great one. 3 is great.
I'm down. I'm at the second to the last of the campaigns, and I'm just like I just want to play through at this point and be done with it.
Yeah.
So I need to do that, but I really want to play Diablo 2.
Yeah, or Diablo 4. Yeah. Yeah, that Diablo 4 is. Yeah, I mean, as I said, it's just as good as like I've never. There's no thing as a bad Diablo. I think all 5 of them are great.
Hmm.
And it's just one of those ones that yeah, this one just kind of add to it, and like I was one of those games I was really looking forward to for a while. Like I got real pumped and everything like that. Looked forward to playing the beta and everything like that. And it's like I felt like I hadn't had that in a while, so that's why I put that one on my list there. And I know it's gonna be one of those games that I definitely will get more use out of as time goes on.
Yeah, I gotta say, so I'll close it up with my number two. And honestly, like by the time that I beat this game, it might easily take over the number one spot. That's Astrobot.
Oh yeah, the S.
I know
Is
it.
this the second one?
Yeah, I know it just came out,
Yeah,
but it is fantastic.
yeah.
It's just so good. And like, so when Astro's Playground was on the PS5, it's still a pretty decent game. I think I racked in like 6-7 hours into it.
Hmm.
Maybe not quite that much, but it's basically supposed to be like a play along game to learn how to use some of the features of the controller that
Yeah.
most games don't use.
Yeah. Well, just like I hate this. It's like every PlayStation system always puts like some kind of like specialty thing. Literally since PS2, they've always
Mhm.
put something in there, and like the first year or two, people will use it, and then it literally gets thrown out the window.
Yeah,
Like I don't know. Like sometimes I always go, Sony. Like Nintendo at least forces everybody to use it, so then like they have to get better at
yeah,
doing it. But like PlayStation 2 had the pressure sensitive buttons that like Gran Turismo and Metal Gear Solid 2 used, and I don't remember anybody else really ever using that past that point. PS3 had the 6-axis thing, and
mhm.
like one of the only games I
Forgot
can
about
really
that.
remember about that is like Uncharted had it where like when you threw the grenade, you could like
Yeah,
move the controller, and it was only in the first Uncharted. I almost want to say Uncharted 2 and 3 didn't even have that feature anymore. PS4 had the touchpad,
hmm,
and you used to in the like once again the first year or two of games, you had that cool. I liked when the weapons wheel was on
yeah,
that, and then that never got used for there. And then I feel like PS5, you got the kind of I don't know what you want to call them, like the choke buttons
yeah.
for like the. Remember when the first time that happened, I literally thought my controller was broke. I'm like, God, is there like something stuck in here?
So that's what I thought too. Like, it's funny you said that because I remember there's a claw machine on Astro's Playground where you have to like the coins you get, and you get like different like pieces of PlayStation history essentially. But I remember like the same thing. I was like, what the hell's going on? And it wouldn't click down. But that was really fun as it was. I remember just being like, this is really good.
Yeah.
It's on your PlayStation for free. You should play
I
that.
know. Well, I remember it
Um,
was there, and you were telling me that, and I was like, "Well," and my head goes to Tsushima, and it was like kind of like a.
yeah,
I felt like as if maybe if I didn't have anything else, yeah, but
but I really feel like with Astrobot, like, and I haven't put that much time into it yet,
mm,
but I mean, I probably like 5 hours or so. But I'm gonna platinum it. I don't care. I love
yeah,
it. Um, it's just it's such like these games are such just like a almost like an homage to like PlayStation history. Like some of like the ships you fly around under the controllers.
yeah.
It's just fun. Like, and it reminds me of like that Mario 64 style world where it's like you have a lot of freedom to do kind of what you want, but really you got to go here and here.
Yeah.
And there's so much just like little nods to like all these different past PlayStation games.
See that almost kind of makes me want to play even more, just because that's kind of cool. Because mostly I always feel like they're like they kind of follow that like in with the new, out with the old kind of saying like
Yeah,
hard. Because think about how many great series that they just literally tossed to the curb, like an old like newspaper. Crash Bandicoot. I mean, I know that's a little bit kind of not exactly theirs, but Twisted Metal.
hmm,
You know, I'm always surprised that they've kept God of War, because like that's kind of unlike them to like keep a series for that long.
I'm grateful to have, but I'm
Yeah,
surprised too. But man, I can't rave about it enough. Play Astro's Playground at least first because it's free, and if you hate it, which I know you won't,
yeah,
then you didn't waste any money. But dude, this game is sensational. Like, it's
interesting.
so good.
Yeah, as I said, I was kind of looking at it today. I'm like, I'll have to give that one a go.
Like, that was one that, like, when I realized what it was, because I didn't even know, because I had left Astro's Playground on my console.
Yeah,
'Cause it was one of those ones. I was like, this is just like such silly fun. I can go back to play this at any time. Who
yeah,
cares? And I left it on there, and then it was like a few months ago. It was just like, here's an update. I was like, why is this being updated?
yeah.
Well, it turns out it's because they added in some little missions where you had to go find some other robots. I was like, this is cool. And then when I learned what it was for, I was like, this is day one purchase for me, baby.
Yeah, here we
And
go. Yeah,
so sure enough, yeah, the moment that finished downloading, I started playing it, stayed up till about midnight, and I
never
was
look
like, oh, I'm
back.
gonna be tired on Friday, but
Yeah, it's okay. Well, cool. Well, man, I got
wrap us up.
one more, and I'm gonna go with the Resident Evil 4 remake
There you go.
on there, and I know it seems kind of like a weird one to have as your number one as a remake, but I go with that Resident Evil 4 remake because that's like the one that like literally like when I was playing through that game, I'm like, at some point they're gonna drop the ball. Like, you know what I mean? They're gonna put some dumb moment in here, some dumb extra character. Something's gonna kind of jack this up, and that game never does. It's like almost like the best definition of how to do a remake right. Like it's one of those ones. Like it's not like I don't. You know, some people will say that it almost even replaces the old one. I don't know about that because I'm kind of nostalgic. I'm the person who still says I like Resident Evil 1 on PS1 over the GameCube remake, even. So go figure. But it's that thing that like it's still so good the whole way through. Everything about it's fluid as all can be. Just when you think that they're like, oh, did they cut that part out? No, they just shuffle it around a little bit. And you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. There it is, right there, and so on like that. You got all the upgrades in there. You know, even like actually, they kind of like dial her in so you don't accidentally like kill her or anything like that, like you kind of would sometimes in the other one.
And El Gigante looks amazing in these.
Yes.
So I did play through this one. I haven't beat it yet. I've played through a good amount, but there was what tripped me out the most, and it was a very small thing early on. But I remember in the old one when like the town's coming after you, all those zombies, you could hide in the clock tower.
Yeah.
And just wait, and then the bell will ring, and they'll all walk off. If you go in, have you tried to go in that clock tower on the remake?
What happens in the clock tower on the remake one?
So it breaks, like the floor breaks, and you come falling down.
They fall.
So you have no choice but to like run and hide and fight them off.
Well, the one that I want to say, I think on the original one though, if you go in the clock tower, there is a chance that they'll throw shit at you up there though.
Oh, okay. I never had that.
Yeah,
happen.
most of the time will still run out, but yeah. I do remember that. Yeah, it does break, so you can't just like full on go and hide.
Yeah, because I was realizing really quickly with this, like, God, these games are still hard.
Yeah.
And so, which is they're good. It's good. It's a good challenge. But that was when I was like, I'm just gonna go hide in this clock tower. Nope.
Yeah. No, that one's so good. And then, gosh, if you actually have the PS4 or PS5 VR thing, you can actually play that game in VR, which would be kind of interesting.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Because the VR version of Resident Evil 4, the original one on the MetaQuest, is really awesome. Like it's one of those ones. Like I wish they would make more games than that kind of style. Where just take an old game, turn it fully VR, because it is pretty cool when you're in there. Because it does change. It does make you really feel like you're totally in there. And that's like that one that like I kind of want one of those PS5 VRs, but it's like I feel like you're literally getting it for like two games: Resident Evil 4 remake and then the Resident Evil 8, because like those two have like the VR modes in them. But yeah, Resident Evil 4 remake. That's the one I'm going with because, as I said, I think that's like pretty darn close, perfect remake. Like there's nothing in there to complain about.
And it's from what I've played so far. I have another bad habit where like I'll get bored of a game and be like, next.
Yeah.
Next. And before I know it, I'm like, oh, I got 18 games that I've put a little bit of time into and moved on. This is one though, because I loved 4 originally. It's like I gotta play through this one, beat this. I'll never forget the moment of like, and I'll say like terror as a kid when the chainsaw zombie came out for the first time. Like,
oh man, 4, yeah, when that 4 originally came out, I remember just the play style, that over the shoulder camera thing, that was so brand new at that time period. Because last thing you were playing was like Code Veronica and like the remake one, and then all of a sudden you have this, and I remember just like literally walking for the while because you had to get used to it. I wasn't used to just running around like in this like new camera angle that I've never seen before, and that's what I love about that remake though, is that like it still keeps all that stuff. It doesn't try to change it into like some new game. It doesn't try to like modernize it or anything. Like it's still just a classic Resident Evil.
Was that you can actually be on the move when you shoot now too?
Yeah, you can do that, I guess. You're not locked off as much. You got a little bit extra.
That was my biggest pet peeve of the original 4, was that when you went to aim, you stopped.
You stopped
to aim, and it was like it was kind of clunky. So I was glad I don't want to say fixed, but that they helped you out with that.
Yeah, because I remember the very first game that ever did it where you could like move and shoot was Dino Crisis, had that feature in it. But you just slowly walk if you want.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Great choice.
Well, that's our whole list of PlayStation 1 through 5, all the good games that we that stuck out to us the most and whatnot. I think that's a fun-filled list there. It makes me want to go back and play some of them. I mean,
I took some notes for some new
games myself, I know there's some I need to catch up on too. God of War and Sleeping Dogs for sure is like the two big ones that I know.
Sleeping Dogs.
Yeah, those ones there. But yeah, it's like PlayStation's got just such great stuff here. Just it's interesting when you break down each one of like the generations too. It really kind of lets you know like you know, like what each sector was and so on like that. And I know of myself, I was kind of thinking about like if I had to probably rank it. I mean, PlayStation 1 that's kind of I love that era. That's like
Yeah.
the one I can still always go back to. But I think that PS3 era, that's the one.
Yeah.
You know,
For me, it was 4, man.
4 was pretty darn close, but
yeah, 3 had some great games. Like I said, I think I just came in a bit too late to the party. And like you said, it was a good time.
Yeah.
Because that's when you can get everything relatively cheap. But 4, I just remember like I was fully back immersed into the gaming world and just loving it.
You know, it's funny that two to me, I feel like that's probably like my kind of least favorite era in a weird way. And it's not saying there's not great games in that time period there, but I think it's more because when I think of that part of 2, I'm like, I was almost playing more GameCube and more Xbox.
Yeah.
You know, PS2 was always kind of like the third wheel system and all that.
I have to say, like, to me, I guess it's like the most honorable mention, but like, I don't know what console it came out on technically, but wherever Fortnite came out at.
That came out at 4.
I still can't stop playing Fortnite.
If I'm not mistaken, because I remember when it came out, because I was like, I was like, oh, it's like the new Gears of War. That was because I was like, oh, okay, it's made by Unreal and all that kind of stuff like that. And then I kind of got it. I was like, oh, this is not really Gears of War at all. This is something kind of different. And then I just kind of never came back to it after that, like initial.
Like I put another couple hours into that last night, like, and it's one of those ones where like, in a way, I know that I'm literally just wasting time because there's no story. But like, I'll play Fortnite and be like, yeah, I'm gonna hop on for 10, 15 minutes, play a round or two, and then it turns into an hour or two, and it's like, oh gosh, where'd the time go?
It just gets you like that. But well, yeah, just like a good game or anything like that.
It's a good list.
But yeah, good list. But yeah, tell us what you think your thoughts are on your favorite era of PlayStation, your favorite games from this section. There's so many of them. I know that like, you know, we kind of just scoured the top surface of what we really enjoy. But till then, go to oldmanorange.com. That's where you'll find all the links, all the extra podcasts, Pizza Boys comics, and all that fun stuff. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes with Buddy here, you know, carrying on the Old Man Orange legacy. Until next time, we will see you some other time.